dramatic tone. The rain slams into the medical tent like fists against canvas. 280 Marines are trapped between rising floodwaters and a minefield from old training exercises gone wrong. Frustrated. "Ma'am, with all due respect, step aside." Staff Sergeant Morrison's voice cuts through the chaos. His bald head glistens with rain as he blocks Elise Grant from the planning table. "This is combat rescue, not bandaging paper cuts in your nice, clean tent." Reflective. The 52-year-old medic adjusts her gray scrubs, eyes never leaving the tactical map spread across the crates. Her breathing shifts. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out, sigh. Nobody notices. Matter of fact. "The bridge is gone," Morrison continues, addressing the crowd of young Marines around him. "The only approach is through the kill zone. We wait for proper assets." Quietly. "18 minutes, Elise says quietly. Her fingers trace a route on the map that doesn't exist in any manual. Gasp. "Excuse me," serious tone. "The upstream dam's emergency spillway activates in 18 minutes. When it does, the water level rises 8 feet in 90 seconds. Slows down. She straightens slowly. 280 Marines won't have high ground anymore. Morrison laughs, harsh and dismissive. And what would a contract nurse know about tactical water hazards? Behind him, Master Sergeant Hayes watches how Elise's stance has shifted. Weight balanced, ready. There's something about the way she looks at that impossible route through the kill zone. Something that makes Hayes remember stories from 20 years ago. Stories about ghosts who pulled men from places nobody could survive. In 17 minutes, they'll all know exactly what kind of ghost she is. The forward operating base sits 12 miles from the Mexican border, carved into Texas scrubland that turns to mud when storms hit. Today's storm is different. 3 weather systems colliding at once, dumping 8 inches of rain in 4 hours. Elise Grant moves through the medical tent with practiced efficiency. She's been here 6 weeks as a civilian contractor, hired to supplement the base medical staff during this training rotation. The young corpsmen call her Mama Grant behind her back. Not mean-spirited, just dismissive. Another aging civilian who doesn't understand their world. She arranges trauma supplies in perfect grid patterns on the shelves. Plasma bags at coordinates A1 through A6, pressure bandages at B1 through B12. Everything aligned to military precision that nobody expects from a contractor. "Grid pattern storage," Corporal Jenkins says, walking past with an armload of wet gear. Someone's been reading the field manual. Elise doesn't respond. She counts the ventilator tubes, 12 complete sets, 4 partials. Her fingers move across the inventory, tapping each item once. The movement is automatic, unconscious, the same way she's counted equipment for decades. Outside, the rain intensifies. Radio chatter floods the command post 50 yards away. She can hear fragments through the tent walls. "Red 3 to base, we're cut off. River jumped its banks. Old training area, grid 7-7. Master Sergeant Hayes enters the tent, water streaming from his patrol cap. He's 48, built like a linebacker who aged into granite. 26 years in the Corps shows in how he moves. Economical, purposeful. "Ma'am, need you to prep for possible casualties," he says. "Weather's got some people stuck." "How many?" Elise asks, already pulling triage tags. 280 Marines, 3rd Battalion's combat training rotation. Hayes watches her hands move. No hesitation in how she sorts the tags. Red for immediate, yellow for delayed, green for minimal, black for expectant. They were running movement drills when the flash flood hit. Location? Training Area 7, between the river and Hill 481. Elise's hands pause for exactly 1 heartbeat. Training Area 7. She knows that grid coordinate, knows the elevation markers, the soil composition, the drainage patterns, knows about the unexploded ordnance left from a training accident 3 years ago that turned a quarter-mile section into a no-go zone. "That's the old demolition range," she says carefully, "the one with the M21 training variants that didn't detonate." Hayes's eyebrows rise slightly. "How does a civilian medic know about classified training accidents?" "I read," Elise says simply. She pulls down cases of saline, stacking them by blood type compatibility, a detail most people miss. Universal donor supplies should be staged separately. Copy that? Hayes turns to leave, then stops, studies her for a moment. You set up that tent like someone who's done mass casualty before. Hurricane relief, Elise says. Not a lie, just not the whole truth. Louisiana, 2005. Hayes nods slowly, but his eyes linger on how she stands. Weight on the balls of her feet, shoulders squared, chin level. It's subtle, most wouldn't notice. But Hayes has spent decades reading people, and something about this civilian medic doesn't add up. The tent flap bursts open. Staff Sergeant Morrison storms in, followed by 6 Marines. Morrison is 35, career infantry, with the kind of aggressive confidence that comes from never being wrong in his own mind. His bald head reflects the emergency lights as he spreads a laminated map across Elise's carefully organized supplies. "Clear this table," he barks at her. "We need planning space." Elise moves her supplies without complaint, stacking them in alternate positions that maintain the grid system. Morrison doesn't notice. He's already drawing on the map with a grease pencil, marking positions. "Here's the situation," Morrison announces to his Marines. 3rd Battalion is trapped in a box. River on the east, swollen to 40 feet wide. Hill 481 on the west, too steep to climb in this mud. North and south approaches are through the kill zone. "What about air extract?" Lance Corporal Rodriguez asks. "Negative. Wind speeds at 60 knots, gusting to 80. No bird can fly in this." Morrison slams his fist on the table. "We go in on foot or they're stuck." Elise studies the map from her position by the supplies. The topographical lines tell a story Morrison isn't seeing. Water flows downhill, but in Training Area 7, the elevation creates a natural dam effect. The river isn't the only problem. "The spillway," she says quietly. Morrison's head snaps toward her. "What?" "Lake Amistad Dam, 12 miles upstream." She points to a spot off the map's edge. When water levels hit critical, the emergency spillway activates automatically. So, in approximately 17 minutes, that spillway opens. 800,000 gallons per second will hit this position. She traces the flow pattern with her finger. Water level rises 8 feet in 90 seconds. Your Marines won't have high ground anymore. Morrison stares at her. "And you know this how?" "Basic hydrology." Elise keeps her voice neutral. "The dam specifications are public record." "Public record," Morrison's voice drips sarcasm. He turns to his Marines. "The nurse reads public records about dam specifications. Anybody else find that weird?" A few Marines chuckle nervously. The tent feels smaller suddenly, the rain hammering harder against the canvas walls. Hayes steps forward. "Morrison, maybe we should what? Listen to a civilian tell us about tactical operations?" Morrison gets in Elise's space, using his height advantage. "Lady, I've been doing this for 15 years. I don't need some contractor who probably got her medical training from a community college telling me about water hazards." Elise doesn't move, doesn't blink. Her breathing remains steady. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. In her peripheral vision, she sees Hayes watching her, sees him note that she doesn't step back from Morrison's aggression. "Staff Sergeant," she says calmly, "your Marines have approximately 16 minutes now, less if the spillway activates early due to system damage." "Our Marines," Morrison corrects, "and will handle it without civilian interference." He turns back to his map, discussing approach routes with his team. They're good routes, textbook infantry tactics. They'd work perfectly if this was just about floodwater. But Elise sees what they don't. The kill zone isn't just dangerous because of unexploded ordnance. The M21 training variants become unstable when submerged. Water pressure can trigger delayed detonation. She pulls out her phone, checking weather data. The storm's eye is 12 minutes out, barometric pressure dropping fast. That pressure change alone could trigger the old ordnance. 15 minutes, she announces. Morrison slams both hands on the table. "Will someone get her out of here?" "Wait." Lieutenant Colonel Rivera enters the tent. She's 42, sharp-featured, with the kind of presence that makes lieutenants nervous and sergeants careful. "What's this about 15 minutes? Morrison straightens. "Ma'am, the civilian is interfering with—" "The civilian is right," Rivera cuts him off. She holds up her tablet, showing real-time dam telemetry. Lake Amistad just went critical. Spillway activation in 14 minutes, 30 seconds. The tent goes quiet except for rain and radio static. Rivera looks at Elise. You predicted this? The storm's pressure system is accelerating upstream flow by 30%, Elise explains. Standard emergency protocols activate spillway at 72 feet. Current level is 71.6 and rising 3 inches per minute. You're a medic, Rivera says slowly. How do you know flood dynamics? I read, Elise repeats, the same non-answer as before. Rivera studies her for a long moment, then turns to Morrison. Show me your approach routes. Morrison points to his map. 2 options, ma'am. North through grid 7-5 or south through 7-9. Both require crossing the kill zone, but if we move fast... You'll trigger the ordnance, Elise interrupts. Everyone turns to stare at her. The M21 variants, she continues, moving closer to the map. They're pressure sensitive after prolonged exposure to moisture. Your Marines weigh 180 to 220 in full gear. That's enough to trigger delayed detonation. How could you possibly know that? Morrison demands. Field Manual 323.119, Explosive Ordnance Disposal Procedures, Revised Edition. The manual number flows from her lips automatically. Page 212, subsection on environmental degradation of training munitions. Morrison's mouth opens and closes. Nobody memorizes EOD manuals except EOD technicians, and they definitely don't memorize page numbers. Hayes moves subtly closer, his hand unconsciously checking his sidearm. Not threatening, just a Marine recognizing that something is very off about this situation. There's another route, Elise says. She picks up Morrison's grease pencil without asking, draws a line that curves impossibly through a terrain marked as impassable. Here. That's through the ravine, Rodriguez protests. It's a 20-foot drop, 17 feet at the northern edge. The erosion from last month's rain created a natural ramp, 40-degree angle. She marks specific points. Place guide ropes here, here, and here. The current will push against you, but if you maintain this vector, you avoid the ordnance field completely. Morrison laughs, harsh and disbelieving. You want us to trust 280 lives to some imaginary route a nurse dreamed up. Medic, Elise corrects quietly. I'm a medic. Whatever you are, you're not military. You don't understand tactical movement. I understand that your Marines have 12 minutes now, Elise says. I understand that standard approach routes put them directly over unstable ordnance. And I understand that nobody else is offering alternatives. Rivera pulls up satellite imagery on her tablet, comparing it to Elise's drawn route. This ravine, it's marked as a dead end. The satellite data is 18 months old, Elise replies. The erosion changed the terrain. And you know this because I walk the perimeter every morning at 05:30. Medical contractors have limited access areas. I stay within bounds. She pauses. The ravine is visible from the authorized trail. It's a perfect explanation, logical, reasonable, completely plausible. Hayes doesn't believe a word of it. Neither does Rivera, but she has 280 Marines about to drown or detonate, and 11 minutes to decide. Morrison, take your team, and the lights flicker. The radio squawks with static. Then a panicked voice breaks through. Base, this is Red 3. Water's rising faster than expected. We've got wounded. 5 casualties, maybe more. Request immediate extract. Red 3, what's your exact position? Rivera grabs the radio handset. Grid 7742. We're on an elevated equipment platform, but it's starting to shift, maybe 10 minutes before it goes under. Rivera looks at the map. 7742 is dead center of the kill zone. Morrison starts grabbing gear. We go now. North route, fast movement. You'll trigger secondary explosions, Elise warns. The wounded won't survive the concussion waves. Better than drowning? There's another way. Elise moves to the medical supplies, starts pulling specific items. I go alone. The tent goes silent. Morrison recovers first, laughing. You, a 50-year-old civilian nurse, is going to solo navigate a kill zone in hurricane conditions? I'm lighter, less pressure on unstable ground. She strips off her medical jacket, revealing arms more muscled than anyone expected. Old scar tissue runs along her left forearm. The kind that comes from rope burns, the kind that doesn't heal pretty. One person can move faster than a squad. This is insane, Morrison says. Ma'am, tell her. How long would it take? Rivera interrupts. 6 minutes to reach them, 4 minutes to establish a guide rope system. That leaves 4 minutes before spillway activation. Elise pulls on tactical gloves from the emergency kit, the movement automatic practiced. Just enough time. Hayes notices how she checks the gloves, running her fingers along the seams, testing the grip pads. It's muscle memory, the kind that takes years to develop. Absolutely not, Morrison declares. I'm not letting some civilian get herself killed on a hero complex. Ma'am, I formally request. Denied, Rivera's voice is ice. But, Grant, I can't authorize a civilian to enter a combat training area. Then don't, Elise finishes her preparations. I'm a medical contractor responding to a mass casualty event. My contract specifies duty to respond with incapability. She looks Rivera in the eye. This is within my capability. You don't know that. Yes, ma'am, I do. The certainty in her voice makes everyone pause. This isn't bravado or adrenaline talking. This is someone stating a fact as simple as saying, water is wet. What would you do? Follow protocol and wait, or risk everything on an impossible route? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you've ever had to make that call when lives were on the line. Rivera keys her radio. Red 3, this is base. Civilian medic is approaching your position with guide ropes. Can you prep your wounded for rapid movement? Base, did you say civilian medic? Affirmative. ETA 8 minutes. There's a pause, then. Copy, base. We'll be ready. Morrison blocks the tent exit. This is wrong. Ma'am, you're sending her to die. Stand aside, Staff Sergeant. Ma'am, that's an order. Morrison moves reluctantly. As Elise passes, he grabs her arm. The sound of metal crashing against concrete. You have no idea what you're walking into. Through the empty mess hall. She looks down at his hand, then up at his face. For just a moment, something flickers in her eyes. Helen Carter collapsed something onto hard and floor, ancient, her frail body hitting hard as food scattered everywhere. Let go, she said quietly. Morrison releases her arm like it from a cut on her forehead. Elise steps into the storm. Jake Morrison hits like a physical attack. All 6 feet of Marine muscle radiating contempt. She takes 3
Marines
seconds
are trying to eat,
herself,
and you're making a mess.
Wind direction,
useless old
identifying landmarks.
5 other Marines
burst into laughter. Derek Chen pulled out his phone. Behind her, Hayes is already at the
Maria
command
Santos,
post's surveillance
the self-proclaimed
station. Queen Bee of Camp
Get me drone
Pendleton,
coverage on
kicked
Grid
Helen's
7
ribs
Seven.
lightly with her
Drones
boot.
are grounded.
Maybe it's
The
time to
operator
retire,
protests.
Grandma. This mess
speeds.
hall doesn't need trash.
I don't care
like
if you
have to fly it yourself. Get me eyes on that medic. Helen slowly pushed herself up from fighting crosswinds that would destroy
years
most
old,
aircraft.
her shoulders
the
seemed
operator,
too thin.
Specialist
Her
Chen,
gray hair
is one
too
of the
brittle.
best.
Blood
He
still
needs to
dripped
be.
from her
The
forehead,
image on
but
screen
she
is
didn't wipe it
chaotic.
away.
Rain,
Instead,
darkness,
she looked at
occasional
Jake with
glimpses of a
peculiar
figure
gray eyes
moving
that
through
seemed
the
to
storm.
calculate
Elise
something
reaches the
beyond the
ravine
moment.
edge in
Her
4
right
minutes.
hand trembled
The
slightly,
route she drew
but
on the map is
not
barely
from fear.
visible. A
5
suggestion of
fingers
possibility
twitched
in an odd
where
rhythm,
others see
as
only
if counting
death.
beats in a
Water
song
rushes
only
through
she
the
could
bottom,
hear.
carrying debris that could
2203
shatter
hours,
bones.
Helen whispered.
She
her
doesn't
gaze
hesitate.
drifting to the window.
The descent is
Wind
controlled
speed
but
12
brutal.
knots.
She uses
3
terrain
exits,
features
nobody
6
else would
targets.
notice. A rock
Optimal
outcrop
breach in
here,
17
a root
minutes.
system there.
What did
Her
you just
boots
say?
find purchase on
Jake
surfaces
frowned,
slick with
stepping
mud.
closer.
When she
Helen
slips,
shook her head,
she recovers
bending
instantly,
down to pick up the
redistributing
scattered tray.
weight like
Sorry,
someone who's
dear.
done this 1,000
Old people say
times.
strange things
Holy
sometimes.
cow! The
Chen
fluorescent
breathes,
lights above
watching the
flickered
feed.
once.
Twice.
She's not even using
Then
safety
complete
equipment.
darkness swallowed the
Hayes
mess hall.
leans closer to the
In
screen.
that absolute blackness,
the way she
a
moves,
voice emerged.
It's familiar.
Not Helen's,
not just
a man's
skilled,
voice,
specifically
heavy with Eastern
trained.
European accent.
He's seen this before.
Good evening,
in
Phantom
combat
6.
footage from
I've been waiting
classified
28 years
operations.
for this moment.
The kind of movement
The
pattern
darkness
that
seemed
takes
to pulse
years to
with sudden
develop,
tension.
and more years
Jake
to
fumbled for
perfect.
his phone.
The
Elise
small
reaches
LED
the bottom
light
of the
casting
ravine.
wild
Water
shadows.
swirls around
Helen's
her
hand
thighs,
shot out,
trying to
pushing
pull
her
her
downstream.
with surprising force.
She leans into it,
Don't,
using
she
the
said,
current
and
instead
for the
of
first
fighting
time,
it.
her voice
Every
carried
step
no
is
tremor at
calculated,
all.
deliberate.
7 Marines
The kill
and
zone
one
starts
cleaning
50
lady.
meters ahead.
The accented
Through
voice
the drone's
continued,
thermal
echoing
imaging,
from
the
somewhere in
unexploded
darkness.
ordnance shows as
Perfect
dark
odds,
spots,
wouldn't you
dozen
say?
of them.
Jake
Scattered
tried
like
to take
deadly
charge,
seeds.
shouting
She's
orders
walking
to his
straight
fellow
into
Marines,
it.
Morrison
But
says.
panic had already
He's
set
gathered
in.
everyone around
Derek
the monitor.
Chen frantically
She'll trigger
triggers
them.
radio,
But Elise
dead.
stops at the
His
kill
phone
zone
showed
edge.
no
She
signal.
pulls
Maria
something from her
Santos
pocket.
screamed as
Small,
footsteps
barely
echoed closer
visible
on the feed.
The sound bouncing
She
off
throws it
walls
ahead of
in
her.
ways that
It
made
lands with a
distance
splash
impossible
lost
to
in the
judge.
storm's roar.
But Helen wasn't
Nothing
panicking.
happens.
In the
She
pitch
throws another
darkness,
object,
she moved
slightly
with
to the
fluid
left,
precision,
then another
not
to the
bumping
right.
into a single table
What's she
or
doing?
chair.
Rivera
Her breathing
asks.
remains steady.
Hayes suddenly
controlled.
understands.
She began counting
She's
under
testing
her breath,
ground pressure,
but
not
finding
in English.
stable paths.
The words were soft.
Elise starts moving
methodical,
again,
but
in
her
what sounded
pattern is
like
different
Russian.
now.
She places
patterns,
each
she
foot
whispered.
precisely,
Size
following
11.
some invisible
Weight distribution
map.
suggests
The drone tracks her
tactical
progress.
gear.
A
Spacing
weaving,
indicates
seemingly
Spetsnaz
random
training
path
through the
her head
ordnance
tilted
field.
slightly.
Except it's not
3
random.
operators.
Primary
Pull up the
at
EOD
north
survey
entrance,
from 3
secondary
years ago.
moving through
Hayes
kitchen.
orders.
Third,
Chen types
maintaining
rapidly,
Overwatch
overlaying
position.
the old
How
survey
can you
on
possibly
current
know
footage?
that?
The
Jake's
correlation
voice
is
cracked
perfect.
with fear.
Elise
Helen
is
didn't
threading
answer.
between ordnance
Instead, she
positions
grabbed
with
Jake's shoulder
accuracy
and
that should
guided
be
him with
impossible
unexpected
without
strength
the survey
toward the
data.
southwest corner.
Data she doesn't
Structural
have access
pillar
to.
here.
Stay
Data
low.
that's classified.
Don't move.
The voice
How is
laughed.
she doing that?
A cold sound
Rivera
that seemed to
whispers.
come from everywhere
Hayes
at
knows.
once. Somewhere
Hiding
deep
won't
in his
help,
gut, Phantom.
he knows.
I know
But he says
every
nothing.
corner of this place.
Elise reaches the
3
midpoint
months
of the
preparation.
The Marine's
every
position is
camera
visible
angle
now.
memorized.
An equipment
every
platform
patrol
rising
route
from the water
calculated.
like a desperate
Even
island.
scheduled your
Figures
precious
huddle on
janitor
top,
shifts.
some lying still.
Something shifted in
Two
Helen's
still.
posture.
That's
3
when everything
months.
goes wrong.
She'd noticed the
a
unusual
massive piece of
maintenance
debris
crew 3
looks
months
like part
ago.
of a vehicle.
The ones who
comes
worked
rushing
only
downstream,
downstream,
who avoided
it's
eye
heading
contact,
straight for the
who
platforms
moved
with
with
too
legs.
much precision for
If it
civilian
hits,
contractors.
the whole structure will collapse.
The main
into the
doors
kill zone.
burst open.
Elise
Colonel
sees it.
Richards
She
entered
has
with
maybe
2
10
MPs,
seconds to
flashlight
decide.
sweeping.
Continue her
What's going
safe
on
path
here?
to the platform,
Wire the lights,
or intercept the debris
to take
through
down
the
the
most
swift,
dangerous section of the
professional.
ordnance field.
Richards hit the ground
She
hard,
doesn't hesitate.
unconscious
The
before
movement
he
is
could finish his
explosive.
sentence.
She launches
The
herself
MPs
across the
followed seconds
unstable
later.
ground.
Helen
Each
moved in
footfall
the darkness,
precisely
tearing
calculated,
strips from the
but
hem of her
terrifyingly
janitor uniform
fast.
with practiced
Water
efficiency.
explodes
She
around
knelt
her as she
beside
crosses
Richards,
spaces
her
between
hands
safe
finding his
zones.
pulse in the dark.
She's going to
Applying
trigger
pressure
them
to points
Morrison
that would
shouts,
slow bleeding
but
from
she
where
doesn't.
his head had struck
Somehow,
the floor.
impossibly,
How do you know
she
medical
doesn't.
procedures?
She reaches the
Jake
debris,
whispered.
a
Lucky
torn
guess.
section of metal
Helen
roofing,
replied,
and
but her
redirects
hands
it
moved
with
with the
body
muscle
weight.
memory
The
of
metal
someone who had
swings
done
wide,
this hundreds
missing
of
the
times
platform by
before.
inches.
The sound of
The
breach
effort
charges
costs
being
her.
placed on
She
doors
stumbles,
echoed
catches
through the hall.
herself, stumbles
Small
again.
metallic clicks
For a
that
moment,
Helen
it looks like she'll
identified
fall
immediately.
directly onto
Semtex,
visible
Eastern
ordnance.
Bloc variety.
Then her body shifts into
4.3
something
second
else.
delay once
something
triggered.
trained.
If this injustice
something
makes your
automatic.
blood boil, if
She
you
drops
believe
into
those
a
who serve in
controlled role,
shadows deserve
distributing her weight
recognition,
across
hit that
maximum
like
surface
button
area
and subscribe.
The roll carries her
Don't
past
forget
the
to tap
ordnance
the thanks
through
button
muddy
below
water and
to
onto
support
stable
more
ground
incredible
near the
true
platform.
stories of hidden
That's
heroes.
That's not
Outside,
possible.
Captain
Morrison
Torres
says.
arrived with a
Nobody
full
moves
squad,
like that
but
without
the doors wouldn't budge.
combat training.
They had been sealed
Hayes
from
finishes
inside with
quietly.
industrial-grade
Elise
magnetic
pulls herself
locks.
onto the
Through the
platform.
reinforced windows,
The
Torres
Marines
could
stare
see
at
only
her.
darkness
This
and the
middle-aged
occasional
woman
sweep
in
of a
soaked
tactical
medical
flashlight,
scrubs,
who
"Get me a
just did
breaching
what their
team,"
best
Torres
operators
barked into his
couldn't.
radio.
Who's
Can
injured?
someone
She
find out
asks,
why the backup
already
power
moving
isn't
to the
kicking
wounded.
in? Ma'am,
Inside,
who are?
Helen guided
One
the
Marine
7 Marines
starts.
through the
Medic,
darkness with
talk
uncanny
while I work.
precision.
Her hands are
found
already
the
on the
electrical
first panel on the
casualty,
wall,
checking
from
vitals
pure
with
memory.
practiced efficiency.
Fingers tracing circuits
Compound
she
fracture,
shouldn't know
left
existed.
femur,
Kitchen freight
probable
elevator,
internal
she
bleeding.
whispered.
She
Old
moves to
model.
the next.
Still runs
Concussion,
on analog
possible
backup
TBI.
power.
Keep
Kozlov
him
wouldn't have
conscious.
thought to disable
Next.
it. Kozlov
Flesh wound,
Jake asked.
superficial.
You know
You're
who
walking.
this is?
Next.
Helen didn't answer.
Hypothermia
She was already
onset.
moving.
Share
Leading them
body
through the
heat.
darkness.
Now.
Jake
She
stumbled
pulls
over
medical
a chair.
supplies from
Helen's
her pack,
arm shot
limited
out,
but
catching
exactly
him with
what's
one
needed.
hand. No
The grip
wasted
was
space,
surprisingly strong,
no wrong
steady.
items. Maria
Everything
Santos
chosen with
whimpered as they
surgical
moved,
precision.
but Helen's presence
We have
seemed to
8
calm
minutes
her.
before the water
A strange
rises.
authority
She tells
radiating
the
from
senior
the old
Marine,
woman,
a
even
sergeant
in pitch
first
darkness.
class named Williams.
Running to the kitchen,
I need 2
Kozlov's
guide
voice
ropes across
taunted.
the kill zone.
I disabled
Who's your
that
best
exit
swimmer?
first, Phantom.
Martinez and Thompson.
Just like I disabled
Williams
the loading
replies
dock
automatically
and the
and
emergency
catches
exits.
himself.
No one
Ma'am,
gets in,
we can't
no one
cross
gets
that
out.
field.
Not until
You
our
can if you
business
follow
is
my
concluded.
exact path.
In the darkness,
She pulls
Helen
paracord
smiled.
from her
It was
pack,
the expression
ties
no one could
specific
see,
knots
but
that Hayes
somehow
recognizes
everyone
through
felt
the
it.
drone feed.
The temperature seemed to drop.
They're not
several
civilian
degrees.
knots.
I'm not
They're
running,
military,
Victor, she said.
Special operations
her voice
military.
carrying across the hall with perfect
Martinez, you
acoustic
first.
calculation.
Step exactly
I'm
where I
hunting.
step. Nowhere else.
The silence that
She
followed
hands him was
one end of the
profound.
road. Thompson,
Kozlov had stopped
your anchor
talking,
until he's
stopped
across.
moving.
For the
She
first
leads
time since the
Martinez
lights
into the
went
kill
out,
zone.
uncertainty
Movement
crept
crept
into the
impossible
equation.
precision.
Helen
The
taps
young
something
Marine
against the
follows,
water pipe.
terrified
3
but
short,
trusting.
3 long.
They make it halfway
3
when the
short.
ground shifts.
Then a complex
Old
pattern
ordnance,
that Jake
disturbed by
recognized
water
as Morse
pressure,
code
starts
but
to
couldn't
surface.
decipher.
Don't
Throughout
move,
the base, in a
Elise
secure
orders.
monitoring
She
station,
studies the
a young
situation
intelligence
for 2
officer's
seconds,
eyes
then
widened.
3
as the
steps
message
back,
came
2
through.
left,
Ghost
1
protocol
forward,
active,
then
authentication.
resume.
They follow
Amber
her
star,
instructions. 3
the
hostile
ordnance settles
operators,
without
priority
detonating.
alpha.
6 minutes until
the intelligence
spillway
officer's
activation.
hands shook.
They reach the
as he
ravine's
picked up a
far
red
side.
phone that hadn't
Martinez
been used in
secures the
15
rope while
years.
Elise returns for the
Sir,
wounded.
we have a
She
ghost
guides each
protocol
Marine
activation,
across,
supporting those who
authentication
can't walk
checks
alone.
out.
The rope
It's-
helps, but it's
Sir,
her pathfinding
it's Phantom
that keeps them
6.
alive. Back in the
4
mess
minutes
hall, Hall,
remaining.
Derek Chen
Thompson
whispered
is last.
urgently.
The Marine
That's
who stayed
impossible.
to anchor the
How
rope.
can you know where they
As
are?
they start across,
We can't see
exhaustion
anything.
finally shows in
Helen's
Elise's
response
movement.
was to remove her
She's
janitor
been
cap.
supporting wounded Marines
In the darkness,
for 20 minutes.
the sound of
Fabric
fabric
current
tearing
and
was
storm.
followed by the soft
Ma'am,
thud
you
of something
okay?
hitting the
Thompson
floor.
asks.
When Jake's phone
Fine.
light flickered
Keep
on
moving.
for just a second,
But
he caught a glimpse
she's not
of gray
fine.
hair on the ground.
Hayes can see
A
it through
wig.
the drone.
Underneath,
the slight stumble,
Helen's real hair
the moment
was
of
shorter,
disorientation,
darker, pulled
she's
back
pushing
in a
beyond
severe
normal
style
human
that spoke
limits,
of military
operating
precision.
on something else.
Two coming from
Training,
the left,
discipline,
Helen said calmly.
will. They're
One from the
3/4
right.
across
The
when
left
the ground
pair will
gives
use
way.
flashbangs.
Not ordnance.
Cover your
just
ears
erosion.
and close your eyes.
But it's
in
enough.
3, 2,
Thompson falls,
1.
pulling Elise with
The
him.
explosion of light
They
and
land
sound
hard
was
in rushing
overwhelming,
water,
but
directly
Helen had
between
already
two visible
positioned
pieces
everyone
of
behind
unexploded
cover.
ordnance.
Their faces turned away.
Nobody move!
Ears protected.
Elise shouts to the
In
Marines
that brief
on both
moment of
sides.
illumination,
To Thompson,
they saw her clearly
listen to
for
me.
the first
On
time.
3,
The
we roll
elderly
left.
stoop was
together.
gone. The trembling
Synchronized.
hands were steady.
Ma'am,
the
I
frail
can't.
grandmother had been
Yes, you
replaced
can.
by something else
I've got
entirely.
you. She moved
Her voice
like liquid
carried
shadow.
absolute
A mop
certainty.
handle in her
1,
hand snapped
2,
in half
3.
with a precise strike
They
against the
roll.
wall edge.
The movement is
creating
perfect,
two perfectly weighted
choreographed.
batons.
They clear the
The
ordnance,
first
reach
operator
stable
entered,
ground,
night
and
vision
pull
goggles
themselves up
glowing
using
green
the
in the
guide rope.
darkness. 2 minutes
Helen
until
struck with
spillway
surgical
activation.
precision.
They
Make
make
it
it
to
to
the
the
safe
safe
zone
zone
as
as
the
the
armor
first surge of
protected,
additional water
but at
arrives.
specific
Not
nerve
from the
clusters in
spillway's
his
exposed wrists
just the
and
storm's
neck.
accumulation.
The operator
finally
dropped
overwhelming
silently.
upstream
You starting to
capacity.
notice something unusual
Move to high
about
ground,
Helen, Elise orders.
something that
Now.
doesn't quite add up.
The Marines scramble
Comment
up the
below
ravine
if you're
using
catching
the
the
ropes
clues.
she's placed.
Maria
She stands at
Santos
the
felt
bottom,
the operator's
physically
weapon,
pushing the
reaching
wounded
for
up,
it instinctively,
ensuring everyone
Helen's
makes
hand
it.
stopped her
1
immediately.
minute until
Don't.
spillway
The
activation.
safety's been welded.
The last
It's a trap
Marine
weapon.
clears the ravine.
Touch the trigger
Elise
and
is
the
alone at
magazine
the bottom when they
explodes.
hear it. A
How
sound
could you
like
possibly
thunder that
know
doesn't
that?
stop.
Maria
The
gasped.
spillway has
Helen
activated
didn't
early.
answer. She was already
Grant,
moving,
get out of
dragging
there!
the
Rivera
unconscious
screams
operator
into the
into a
radio.
supply closet.
Elise looks
with
up at the
strength that
ravine
shouldn't
wall,
exist in her
sees the water
seemingly
coming,
aged
a
frame.
wall of
The
brown
second operator
destruction.
tried to flank
Calculates
them, but
time
Helen
and
had
distance.
anticipated it.
She can't
She
make it.
positioned
The
everyone
math is simple
specifically
and
to funnel
merciless,
the attacker,
but she tries
into a
anyway.
narrow corridor
Launches
between
herself at the
tables.
wall,
When he
climbing with
appeared,
desperate
she was
efficiency.
already there.
The water
having
moved
moved
50
silently
yards around
away.
the entire
30.
group.
20.
The encounter lasted
That's
less
when
than
Hayes
2
sees it
seconds.
clearly through the
The
drone.
operator went
sees
down
the
with a
moment Elise
confused
stops
expression.
trying to simply
His
climb
nervous
and
system
starts doing
temporarily
something
shut
else.
down.
Something
By
trained
to
into
pressure
muscle
points
memory
that
so
few
deep
people in the
it
world
survives
knew
everything
existed.
else.
Outside,
Her movement pattern
Sergeant Mills
changes,
had arrived
becomes
with
something he's only
reinforcements.
seen in
He was a
classified
20-year
footage from
veteran who'd served
pararescue
in Bosnia,
operations.
Afghanistan,
The way
and
PJs
Iraq.
move when
As
extracting
he watched through the
wounded from
window,
impossible
observing the
positions.
tactical movements
She's 10
illuminated by
feet from the
sporadic
top when the
flashlight
water
beams.
hits.
Something
The
nagged
drone
at his
image
memory.
goes chaotic.
That movement
Water,
pattern,
debris,
he muttered
violence.
to Captain Torres.
When it clears,
I've seen it before.
she's somehow still on
Bosnia,
the wall,
gripping a root
95.
system with one
There were
hand
rumors
while
about a
tons of
ghost
water
unit,
try to rip
night
her
reconnaissance
away.
specialists
Hold on!
who could operate
Marines
in
are screaming
complete
from
darkness.
above, throwing
They said
ropes.
the unit commander
She
was
catches one,
starts
but
to
no,
climb,
that's
but
impossible.
the water is
What's
winning.
impossible?
Her strength
Torres
is
demanded.
failing.
Phantom
Everyone can
6,
see it.
but that whole unit
Then Sergeant
died in
Morrison,
Operation
the
Amber
same
Star.
Morrison who
All
dismissed
6
and mocked her,
operators.
slides
The
down the
military
muddy
confirmed
slope
without a safety line.
Inside, Kozlov's
He grabs her
frustration
arm.
was
The
growing
Smiths
audible.
arm just
Enough
as her grip
games.
fails.
You think
Hauling
you can
her
protect
up
them
with
all,
raw strength
Phantom?
and desperation.
You're older now.
They tumble
Slower.
onto solid ground
And you're
as the flood
alone.
roars past
Helen
below,
guided the Marines
carrying
to the
away
kitchen,
the equipment
her hand
platform
trailing along
and
the
everything
wall,
else.
reading the building.
Elise
like
lies
Braille.
in the mud.
She stops
breathing
suddenly,
hard,
sniffing the
her
air.
gray scrubs
Ghastly.
are torn,
He's
revealing
ruptured
more
the main
scars
line.
across her
4
shoulders
minutes
and
until
back.
the concentration
Scars
reaches
that tell
combustible
stories.
levels.
Scars
He's
that
trying to
Marines
blow us
recognize.
up. But
Jake's
what
voice
everyone
pitched
notices,
higher with
what
panic.
makes Hayes'
No.
suspicions
He's
crystallize
creating a
into
secondary
certainty,
threat to force
is the
us into
small
the open.
tattoo exposed
Standard
on her left
Spetsnaz
shoulder.
tactic.
Wings
Page
wrapped around a
47
dagger.
of their
the
Urban
letters
Warfare
PJ
Manual,
barely
if
visible
memory
beneath.
serves. Derek Chen
Pararescue,
stared at her in the
Elite Air
darkness.
Force Special Operations.
Who are you?
The
Right
ones
now,
who go into
I'm the
impossible
person
places
keeping you
to bring
alive.
people out.
Follow me.
The walk-in freezer is
Morrison
reinforced and
stares.
airtight.
Sudden
We
understanding
can wait out the
flooding his
gas
face.
there.
Why
You're
should we
military.
trust you? Jake demanded.
Was
His earlier
Elise
arrogance
corrects,
replaced with
pulling
desperate
herself to
confusion.
the sitting position.
Helen's voice was soft.
She doesn't try to
but
cover
carried
the tattoo.
absolute certainty.
There's no point now.
Because, young man,
Williams,
you're
the
still
sergeant
breathing.
first class from
If
the
I wanted
platform,
you dead,
pushes
you
through
would have
the
been
crowd.
dead 17 minutes
I know
ago.
that ink.
Security
Pararescue
footage from the previous
but I've
week
never seen a
was being
female
reviewed
PJ
frantically in the
There
basis
weren't
command
many
center.
of us.
There
Elise
was Helen,
accepts a water
meeting
bottle
with a
from
man
Thompson,
outside the mess
drinks
hall.
carefully.
The image was
Still
grainy,
aren't.
but the man
Us?
appeared to be passing
Rivera
her
arrives,
something.
having
Money,
sprinted from the command
documents.
post.
Sir,
You were Air
a
Force
technician
pararescue?
called out.
We've
Senior
got a
Master
problem.
Sergeant Elise
Helen
Grant.
Carter,
Elise says
she died in
quietly,
2010.
retired. 9
Car
years
accident
ago,
in Phoenix.
the silence
Whoever
that
this
follows
is
is deafening
she's using a
despite the
stolen
storm.
identity.
Wait.
Kozlov's
brain
voice
is
echoed
clearly
through the mess
spinning.
hall again.
Silent crossing
Triumphant.
protocols.
They're starting to
The
figure
movement
it out, aren't they,
patterns.
Phantom?
The way you read
Your
that
handler
ordnance
sold
field.
you out.
His
Told
voice
us
rises
exactly
with
where
each
to find
realization.
you. You're
How
not
much
just
did
PJ.
Moscow pay you
You're
to disappear
I
all
was
those years ago?
Elise
How
cuts him
much to
off.
betray your
Past
country?
tense. Helen's
Hayes steps
smartwatch,
forward.
a
The
tactical
Ghazni
model
province
with night
incident.
vision capabilities,
2009.
and military-grade
Elise
heart
goes
rate
very
monitoring
still.
that could run
What
for
incident?
7 days
Rivera
on a single
demands.
charge.
Hayes
Glowed
doesn't take his
softly in the
eyes off darkness.
Elise. She checked
Classified
it once,
operation.
then continued moving.
Pararescue team
40
went in
degrees
to
left,
extract a
8
surrounded
meters
unit.
forward.
She
3
instructed the
PJs
group.
didn't make it out.
Mind the overturned
team leader
table at your
disappeared
2
afterward.
o'clock. Never
They
officially
moved through the
died.
darkness like a
Never
strange
officially
parade.
retired.
Helen leading
Just
with absolute
gone.
confidence while 7
Because
Marines
I got them
stumbled
killed,
behind her,
Elise says
entirely
flatly.
dependent on her
I misread
guidance.
the approach.
The third
Triggered an
operator had been
IED.
waiting. 3 of my
Patient,
people dead
professional.
because I made the wrong
He'd studied
call.
the layout.
That's
They'd
not
have to pass through this
starts.
choke point.
That's
But
exactly
Helen
what
knew
happened.
too. She'd
She'd felt the air
swaying
displacement
slightly.
from his breathing.
I failed.
Heard the subtle
They
shift
died.
of weight on the
I left.
floorboards that indicated
She looked at
someone
Morrison.
maintaining a
So,
firing position
yes,
for
Staff
extended
Sergeant.
periods.
I know about
the kitchen
tactical
knife left
water
her hand in a
hazards.
fluid
I
motion.
know about kill zones.
Sailing through the
I know
darkness
about
with
leaving people
impossible
behind
precision.
because you made the
It
wrong
struck
decision.
exactly where she
And I
intended,
know I'm just a
pinning the
civilian
operator's
contractor
sleeve
now,
to the wooden
by
door
choice.
frame. immobilizing his
toward the
trigger
medical
hand
tent.
without causing
Grant,
serious injury.
Rivera calls.
Warning shot.
Elise stops,
She said,
but doesn't
simply.
turn around.
The next one
You just
won't
saved
miss.
280
The walk-in
Marines.
freezer door
No,
opened
ma'am,
with a
we all
pneumatic
did.
hiss.
All.
Helen
I just
ushered
knew the
everyone
route.
inside.
She
Then
continues
paused at the
walking.
threshold.
The Marines part
Thermal
to let her
differential
pass.
will hide our
Some
heat
salute her
signatures for
instinctively,
approximately
even though
6
she's in
minutes.
civilian clothes.
After that,
Even
his
though she's
infrared will pick
technically
us up.
nobody.
But
Then what?
Word spreads
Maria
fast
asked.
in the military.
Her earlier
Within an
cruelty
hour,
replaced with
everyone
raw
on base
fear.
knows what happened.
Then we
a
stop
civilian
hiding
medic,
and
a
start
former
hunting.
PJ who lost
Jake
everything,
watched her in the dim
walked into
emergency
hell
lighting of the
because
freezer.
Marines needed help.
The way she stood,
she didn't do it
the
for
way she
glory or
moved,
recognition.
everything had
She did it
changed.
because that's what
The
PJs
grandmother
do,
facade had
that
completely
others may
fallen
live.
away.
The
You're
full
not
story
really a
comes out in
janitor,
pieces
are you?
over the next 12
Helen
hours.
turned to him.
Elise
And in the
Grant,
cold light,
call sign,
you could see her
White
eyes
Bridge,
clearly for the
was
first
one of the
time.
most decorated
They were the eyes of
pararescue
someone who had
specialists
seen
in
too
Air
much,
Force history.
done too much,
67
lost
combat
too much.
rescues.
I've been
3
a janitor
Silver
for
Stars,
15 years, Mr.
Distinguished
Morrison.
Flying Cross.
Before that,
Purple Heart twice
before
over.
that, I
Then
was
came
something else.
Ghazni Province.
A Morrison.
Operation
She repeated
Copper
his
Shield.
name slowly.
A Ranger unit
Your
was pinned
grandmother's
down,
maiden name was
wounded,
Morrison,
running out
wasn't
of
it?
ammunition.
Sarah Morrison
Elise
from
led a
Oklahoma.
4-person PJ
Jake
team
nodded,
in for
confused.
extraction. How did you
The
know that?
intelligence was wrong.
Your grandfather.
The safe route
Staff
wasn't
Sergeant
safe.
Timothy Morrison.
The IED that killed
served
her
with
3
distinction
teammates
in the
was
75th
massive,
Rangers
designed to
before
destroy
transferring to a
vehicles.
classified
They
unit
never
in
had a
93.
chance.
Helen's voice
Elise
grew
survived
distant.
because she was
He
on
was a
point,
good man,
scouting
the
ahead.
best spotter I ever worked
She heard
with.
the explosion.
You knew my
ran
grandfather?
back, found pieces
Knew
of people
him?
she'd trained with
Helen's
for
laugh
years.
was bitter.
People
He
she was
saved my life
responsible
4
for.
times in Bosnia.
She stayed with
I
the
managed
bodies
to
for
return
6
the favor
hours,
twice,
fighting off
we
enemy
called it
forces
even.
alone.
The
until
freezer door
backup
suddenly
arrived.
buckled.
The
as
official
something heavy
report
slammed
cleared her
against
of fault
it from outside.
The intelligence
Kozlov's
failure
voice
wasn't
was
her
closer now,
responsibility,
more personal.
but that didn't
You
matter
killed
to her.
12 of my
3
men in
PJs were
Bosnia,
dead,
Phantom.
and she was their
Good
leader.
men. In her
Patriots
mind,
who believed
that
in
equation
something
only
greater.
had one solution.
Patriots.
She
Helen's
disappeared
voice turned
3
to
weeks
ice.
after the
They were
memorial
trafficking
service.
children,
left a
Victor.
resignation
7
letter,
to 12
her
years
medals,
old,
and
sold to
nothing
the
else.
highest bidder.
The
Your
Air Force listed
Patriots
her
were
bomber as
monsters.
retired for medical
They were
reasons.
soldiers following orders.
PTSD,
They were
surrender's
predators.
guilt.
And I put them down like the
terminology
rabid
that doesn't
dogs
come
they
close
were.
to describing the
Outside the
actual
freezer,
weight.
the gas
For 9
concentration
years,
was rising.
she moved
through
from
the
job
small
to
window.
job. Helen could see
Hurricane
Kozlov
relief,
himself now.
Wilderness
Victor
EMT,
Kozlov,
disaster
former
response,
Spetsnaz,
current
always
mercenary,
helping, never
and the
staying,
ghost from her past,
never wearing a
she'd hoped
uniform
never
again.
to face again.
Until 6
He was
weeks
older
ago,
too,
when she
scarred,
took a contract
but
position
still
at a
lethal.
training base
Tell
in
me,
Texas.
Phantom,
Just
Kozlov
another
called
job.
out.
Just
Do they
another
know
place
about the
to help
massacre?
without being
Do they
seen.
know what you did
The
to
morning
that
after the
village?
rescue, Base
Helen's
Commander
jaw
General
tightened.
Morrison,
That
no
wasn't a
relation to
village.
the staff
It was a
sergeant,
processing
arrives
center.
by helicopter.
43 traffickers.
He's not alone.
0
3
civilians.
other generals accompany
The records
him,
say otherwise.
along with someone from
The
Air
records
Force
were
Special
altered by people
Operations
who
Command.
profited from the
They
trade.
find Elise in the
People
medical
in both
tent,
our governments
reorganizing
who needed the
supplies
truth
that don't
buried
need
along with my
reorganizing.
team.
Senior
Derek
Master
Chin was
Sergeant
typing
Grant
frantically
the general
on his
says,
phone.
I'm not
which had
military
suddenly
anymore,
regained
signal.
signal.
No,
I'm
but
finding
you were.
something.
And
Classified
what you did
files
yesterday
are being accessed
he
remotely.
pauses.
Someone
We've
with
reviewed the
Pentagon
drone
clearance
footage,
is pulling
the movement
everything
patterns
about
you
Operation
used.
Amber
They're being
Star.
added to
On his
pararescue training
screen,
curriculum.
fragments of documents appeared.
You
Photos
saved
from
280
1995.
Marines using
6
techniques that
operators in
officially
night
don't
combat
exist
gear,
because they were
faces
developed in
obscured by
combat
tactical
and never
masks.
documented.
But one
the Air
figure
Force
stood
representative
out.
steps
Smaller,
forward.
slighter,
Techniques
but
that need to
positioned
be
at the
taught.
center.
There
The
are
team
other
leader.
instructors.
The images were
not
labeled
with your experience.
Ghost Team 6.
My experience
Operation
got people
Amber
killed.
Star.
General
Status,
Morrison's
KIA.
voice softens.
Killed
Your
in action,
experience saved
Derek
people
read.
yesterday.
All 6
Just like it
operators
saved
confirmed
67
dead.
before
Bodies were
Ghazni.
covered and identified.
Elise finally looks up.
He looked up at
What do
Helen.
you want?
But you're here.
We want to offer you
5 bodies were recovered.
Full rank,
Helen
back
corrected.
pay, choice
5
of
members of
assignment.
my team.
The pararescue
The 6th
school
body they
needs
claimed
someone
was
like
mine
you.
belonged to one
Someone
of the
who
traffickers.
failed,
Someone
similar
who
height,
survived
build,
failing.
The
Someone
DNA
who
test
knows
was
the
faked
cost.
by someone very
The
high
general
up
places a
who
folder
wanted
on
me
the
to
table.
disappear.
The offer
Why?
stands indefinitely.
Because I knew
No
too much.
pressure.
Because
Just
I'd
think
refused
about
certain
it.
orders.
They leave.
Because dead heroes
Elise
can't
stares at the
testify
folder for a
before
long
congressional
time.
committees.
Inside is
the
her
gas
old
leak had
service
been
record,
contained by
her
emergency
medals,
systems,
and a single
but Kozlov
photograph.
wasn't
Her
finished.
PJ team
Through the
before
freezer window,
Ghazni.
they could see
4
him
people
setting
in
up
combat something
new.
new, smiling
Helen
at the
recognized
camera.
it
3 of them
immediately.
dead
A
because of a
portable
decision
thermal
she
lance.
made. Military
Morrison,
grade,
the staff
could cut
sergeant,
through the freezer
appears
door
in the tent
minutes.
doorway.
We need to move.
His entire
she said.
demeanor has
Now.
changed.
Move
No
where?
aggression now,
Jake demanded.
just awkward
He's got
respect.
us trapped.
Ma'am,
Helen looked at him steadily.
Sergeant,
Your grandfather once asked me the same question.
Starts
We
over.
were pinned down by 32
I owe you an
hostiles
apology.
in a bombed-out school
No,
in
you
Sarajevo.
don't.
No backup.
I dismissed
no
you.
extraction.
Disrespected
no
you.
hope.
What did you do?
You saw a civilian
I told
in
him
your
the truth.
workspace during
When
an
you can't
emergency,
run
and you can't hide.
Elise turns
There's
to
only
face
one
him.
option left.
You reacted exactly
paused,
how you should
checking
have.
her watch
But
again.
you're not a civilian.
You become
You're-
the nightmare they
I am a
whisper about
civilian
in the dark.
by choice.
She moved to
And
the
that's
back
not
of the
going to
freezer,
change.
running her hands
Morrison
along the wall
shifts
until she
uncomfortably.
found what she was
The
looking
Marines
for.
you saved
a
want to
maintenance
thank you.
panel. They're
Painted
forming
over,
up outside.
forgotten. Tell them they're welcome.
Inside was
but
the
I have
freezer's
inventory
original
to finish.
ventilation system
Ma'am,
from
they
before
really
the
want-
renovation 5 years
Staff
ago.
Sergeant.
The
Her voice
ductwork was
carries the
narrow,
quiet authority
cramped,
that
but
only comes from
possible.
absolute
This leads to
certainty.
the loading dock.
I didn't do it
she
for
said.
thanks.
It's a
I did it
straight
because
crawl,
they
30
needed
meters.
help.
That's
At the
all.
end, there's a drop into
Morrison
the storage
nods
room.
slowly.
2
Yes,
meters,
ma'am.
controlled
He
fall.
starts to leave.
You want us
then
to
turns
crawl
back.
through there?
For
Maria
what it's
looked
worth,
horrified.
those PJs
I
and
want you to
Ghazni,
survive.
they knew the
This
risks.
is how you survive.
We all do.
One
And
by
I
one,
bet
if
if
you
you
help
asked
them into
them,
the vent,
they'd say
giving
they were
each
honored to
precise
serve under
instructions on
you.
navigation.
He leaves before
Jake was
she
the
can
last to
respond.
go.
As
As
he
he
climbed
returns
in,
to
he
her
turned back.
inventory. What about
Outside,
you?
she can hear
I'll
the
be right
Marines
behind
forming
you.
up.
Helen
Their
lied
voices
smoothly.
carrying through the tent
Jake
walls.
hesitated. Someone
That's not
starts
true,
cadence.
is it?
One of the
Helen
old
smiled.
ones about
And for a
bridges and
moment,
water
she looked
and
like a
those who cross
grandmother
between.
again.
She
Your
recognizes
grandfather
it.
was smarter
They used
than
to sing
you.
it in pararescue
He would have
training.
already been halfway
about the
through
bridges
that
that
vent
only
by
appear
now.
when someone needs to
He
cross.
would have stayed to help
about
you.
the people who become
No.
those bridges.
He would have
about
followed
the
orders.
price they pay.
Because he understood
Her phone
that
buzzes.
sometimes
Unknown
one
number,
person has to hold the
encryption
line
signature she
so others can
recognizes.
live. The text
Go.
is simple.
Now.
Tower
That's
4
an order,
operational.
Marine.
Jake crawled into the
Authentication
vent,
required.
and Helen sealed
Your
it behind
bridge
him.
is still
Then she turned to
standing.
face the freezer
Tower
door.
4.
Just as the
That was her
thermal
unit's
lance burst
designation
through.
in Afghanistan.
The metal glowed orange.
Someone is using
then white
old channels,
then began
old
to part
codes.
like curtains.
Someone who
Through
knows
the growing
who she really
gap,
was.
she could see Kozlov's
She deletes
face,
the message,
scarred
but she
and
knows
older,
it will come
but
again.
still carrying
Because
the
once
same
you build a
cruel
bridge for
intelligence
others
she
to
remembered.
cross, you can't
Alone
really
at
tear it
last,
down.
Phantom.
You
He
can
said in
only
Russian.
choose whether to
Not
maintain
quite.
it. Helen replied
The rain
in
has
the same
stopped.
language.
Sunlight
You
breaks
forgot
through the
about the
clouds,
ghosts,
illuminating
ghosts,
the flood damage.
the ones who
the
have been
training
watching
area
you for
is
the last
destroyed,
3 months.
but every Marine
Did you
is
really
alive.
think you were the only
280
one planning
souls
this
who
reunion?
get to go home
Doubt
because someone
flickered
knew
across
the impossible
Kozlov's
route.
face. Helen
Outside
used
the
that
tent,
moment of
Hayes is
uncertainty.
talking to
The
Rivera.
freezer had one
She'll
feature
disappear
Kozlov
again.
hadn't
Give it
considered.
2 weeks,
Emergency
maybe 3.
CO2
She'll finish her
fire
contract
suppression.
and vanish.
She triggered it
We
manually,
could stop her,
flooding the
make her
area
stay.
with dense white
No,
gas that
Hayes says
obscured
firmly.
everything. She's earned the
In
right
that
to
chaos,
choose,
she
even if
moved.
that choice is to
Mills,
remain invisible.
watching from outside,
inside
saw
the
it
tent,
happen through the
Elise
window.
finishes her
One
inventory.
moment,
everything
there was
in
only
its
white
place.
gas and
everything
confusion.
counted and
The
ready.
next,
just like she was on
taught.
the ground,
just like
Helen
she'll
standing
always
over
do,
him, whether
his
anyone
own weapon
sees
in her
it
hands.
or not.
Pentagon's on the
after-action
line,
report will become
Torres
required
shouted.
reading.
They're
at the
asking about
Combat
Phantom
Medic Advanced
6.
course.
They want confirmation
Lieutenant
of
Colonel Rivera
identity.
makes a note to
Tell
contact
them
the training
Mills
development
started,
team
then
about
stopped.
updating their civilian
Through
integration
the window,
protocols.
in a brief
But
clearing
that's
of the
tomorrow's
gas,
concern.
he saw Helen's
Today there's
torn
work
shirt.
to do. There are
Saw
wounded to
what was
treat,
underneath.
supplies to distribute,
Mother of
stories
God.
to tell.
Tell them confirmed.
And somewhere in the
Phantom
medical
6
tent,
is alive.
a ghost
The
continues
tattoo
her
was
work.
elaborate,
Not
beautiful,
because anyone
and
orders her
terrible.
to, not
It covered
because anyone
most of her
thanks
left
her,
shoulder and
but
upper back.
because that's what bridges
Ghost
do.
Recon,
They
in
hold
Gothic
weight
letters
so
curved
others
above
can
a
cross,
detailed skull,
even when no
wearing a
one
special
remembers they're
operations
there.
beret.
The next
Below
morning
it,
arrives
Operation
gray and
Amber
humid.
Star,
the Texas sun
and
struggling
coordinates,
through the storm-damaged clouds.
44.8176
Elise is in the
degrees
medical
north,
tent at
15.867
earlier than
degrees
usual.
east.
She doesn't sleep much
The exact
anymore.
location
Hasn't
in
for
Bosnia,
9 years.
where 5 members of
The
Ghost
faces
Team
come
6
back when
had
she
died.
closes her eyes.
3 Purple Hearts
Jackson,
were etched into the
Martinez,
design,
along with
Thompson,
a silver star,
different
and a
Thompson than
distinguished
the
service
Marine
from
Cross.
yesterday.
But it was
Her
the number
Thompson,
that made Mills'
her
blood
team.
run cold.
She's checking
A simple
expiration
6
dates
incorporated
incorporated
into
into
the skull's
stop
design.
outside the
Not
tent.
sixth member,
Multiple sets,
not team
moving
six,
in
she was
formation.
six.
The
Military
legendary
precision.
commander of the most
Enter,
elite night
she says
operations
without
unit
looking
in
up.
U.S.
Four
Military
Marines
history.
step inside.
Jake
Not
and
just
the
any
others had made it
Marines,
through the
the
vent
wounded from
and were
yesterday's
stumbling
rescue.
out of the storage
The one
room
with the broken
when they
femur
heard the
is in a
commotion.
wheelchair.
Emergency
Leg
lights were
immobilized.
flickering back on.
The
throughout
concussion
base.
case moves carefully,
The backup power
supported
had
by
finally
Thompson.
been restored.
They're all in
probably
service
by Helen's
uniforms,
ghost
not the
protocol
usual
activation.
utilities.
They ran back
Ma'am,
toward the mess
William
hall,
says,
arriving
he's
just as
holding
the
something
doors were
wrapped
being
in cloth
forced open.
We
by
know
base
you said no
security.
thanks necessary,
Inside,
but
they could see
I
Helen
meant it,
standing
Sergeant.
calmly in the
Yes,
center of
ma'am,
the chaos.
but
Kozlov
isn't
was on
thanks.
his knees.
He unwrapped
hands
the
zip
cloth
tied behind
revealing
his
a
back.
challenge coin.
His 2
Not a
conscious
unit
operators
coin,
were
something
similarly
older,
restrained,
more
worn. The third was
This
still
belonged to
unconscious,
Staff
but
Sergeant
breathing
Robert
steadily.
Chen.
Colonel
Colonel
Richards
Richards
was sitting
World
up,
War II.
holding his head
Pacific
but alert.
Theater.
Elise's
He took
hands
one
still
look at
on the
Helen,
medical supplies.
saw the tattoo
Williams
through her torn
continues.
shirt.
He was
struggled
trapped
to his
behind
feet.
enemy lines in
Even
the
injured,
Philippines.
units.
Even confused
43
military
days.
protocol
Everyone
took
wrote
over.
him off as dead.
He snapped to attention.
Then an Army
and
Air
saluted.
Corps rescue
Colonel
pilot
Richards,
flew into
Camp
a
Pendleton
hot LZ.
security.
No
He said
backup,
formally.
no support.
It's an honor, ma'am.
Pulled
an
him out under
absolute
fire.
honor.
He
Helen
sets the
didn't
coin
return
on
the
the table.
salute.
That
couldn't.
pilot's name
she
was
wasn't in
Bridge.
uniform.
Colonel
She
Samuel
wasn't
Bridge.
officially
Your
military
grandfather,
anymore.
according to
but
our
she nodded
research
with the
last
gravity
night,
of someone
the
who
tent is
understood the
perfectly
weight
quiet.
of the gesture.
How?
The honor was
Elise
mine,
says
Colonel.
slowly.
15
Did you
years
find
ago,
that
I
information?
swore I was done with this life.
Master Sergeant
but some
Hayes
oaths
helped.
run deeper
He
than
recognized your
retirement.
call sign wasn't
Jake
random.
pushed through the crowd of Marines
White
that was
Bridge
forming.
isn't just
His
about
face was
building
streaked with
connections.
tears.
It's
Ma'am,
about family
I-
legacy.
What I did earlier,
Elise picks up the coin.
I didn't know.
It's heavy.
I'm
Real
so
silver
sorry.
from an era when such
Helen
things
looked at him
mattered.
with those gray
One
eyes
side
that had
shows the
seen too
Marine
much.
Raiders insignia.
You couldn't have known.
The other has been
I made
worn
sure of
smooth,
that.
except for
I've been
4
Helen
words.
Carter,
Janitor
Bridges
for
appear when
15
needed.
years.
Chen was my
Before
great
that,
uncle.
I was
William
Lieutenant
says.
Colonel Helen
That
Morrison,
coin's been in my family
commander
for
of Ghost
70
Team
years.
6. And
he said to
before
pass
that,
it on if we ever
she
met a
paused.
bridge who needed
Before
reminding
that,
what they're worth.
I was just a young
I can't
woman
accept
who
this.
believed she could make
You
a
can't
difference
refuse
in the
it
dark
either.
places of
Marine
the world.
tradition, a debt
Morrison,
paid forward
Jake's
can't be
voice
turned
cracked.
away. William
That's-
steps back.
You have the same
Besides,
name as
we
my
already logged it
grandfather?
in the unit history.
No, son.
Official
Your
record.
grandfather took
You're
his
stuck
wife's
with it.
name when they married.
Before Elise can respond,
Said Morrison was
they've
a name
turned and
worth
marched
carrying
out in
forward.
perfect formation.
He was honoring
leaving her
his
holding a
promise
piece
to
of
me
history
to
that
make
weighs
sure the
more than
Morrison
metal
name
should.
lived on after
She's
I was
still staring at
supposedly
the coin
dead.
when Hayes enters 10
Maria
minutes later.
Santos stood frozen.
He's carrying 2
Her
cups
earlier
of coffee,
cruelty
sets one next
transformed
to
into
her
awe.
without asking.
The stories
Knew your
about women in
grandfather's story
special
would come out
operations.
eventually. He says.
They started with
Military's
you.
a small
You
world.
were the first.
Legacies echo.
Not the first,
You
Helen
researched
corrected.
me. Just
The
the
moment
first
you
they
walked
couldn't
into that
classify
kill zone,
out of existence.
had to know who we were
My
dealing
team's
with.
work in Bosnia
He sips his
saved
coffee.
300 children from
Colonel
trafficking
Samuel
rings.
Bridge.
The military wanted to
combat
bury it
rescues in
because it
World War
implicated
II.
several
Flew
high-ranking
planes
officials
held together
in the
with
trade.
wire and prayer
They gave me
into
a choice.
places
Nobody else would
Die
go.
a hero,
sound
or
familiar?
live as nobody.
That was different.
So
you chose to
was it?
disappear?
Man
I
saw
chose to
people
survive.
needed help.
And to
Used
keep my
his skills
promise
to
to provide
provide
good soldiers,
died
who
in
didn't
his
make
bed
it home.
at 93.
I told their families
surrounded
I'd
by
live for all
grandchildren,
6 of us,
including one
Derek
who grew
Chen
up
was
to
still
be
on
the
his
youngest
phone,
female
pulling up more
pararescue
declassified
specialist in Air
documents.
Force history.
This is incredible.
Elise
You have
sets
the
down the
highest
coin
confirmed
carefully.
kill count
That
in
person
night
doesn't
operations
exist
history.
anymore.
No,
73
then who saved
confirmed
those
in
Marines
Bosnia
yesterday?
alone?
A contractor who
expression
knew the
darkened.
terrain.
Every one of
Hayes
them was
laughs,
trying to hurt
short and
children.
sharp.
Right.
I don't celebrate
A contractor
those
who
numbers,
happens
Mr.
to
Chen.
know silent
I
crossing
carry them.
protocols.
Captain
Who can
Torres
read
stepped forward.
ordnance patterns
Ma'am,
in the dark?
I need to ask,
Who
is the
moves
threat
like she's done
contained?
1,000
Helen
combat
looked at Kozlov,
extractions.
who was glaring at
He
her
leans
with
forward.
undimmed hatred.
Grant,
This
I've been in
threat
the Corps
is,
for 26
but
years.
Victor here was just
I've seen
the
every
first
kind of
wave.
warrior there
He
is.
mentioned Moscow
You're not a
paid
contractor.
someone. There's a
You're
larger
an
operation
operator running
running
from
from Operation
Hydra.
Guilt. Kozlov spat
3 people
suddenly.
died.
You think you've
in
won,
combat,
Phantom?
following
Hydra
orders,
has
doing their
47
jobs.
assets embedded in
His voice
military
hardened.
bases across
You
the
dishonor
country.
them
by
This was
pretending
just
their
to
choice
confirm
was
you
your
were
failure,
alive.
to draw
The
you
words
out.
hit like physical
Then you
blows.
failed?
Helen
Elise's
said
breathing
simply,
changes.
I'm not the same
controlled
operative I was
four-count
28
anymore.
years ago.
Ragged, real.
I'm just an old
You
woman
don't
who cleans
understand.
floors.
I commanded
Kozlov
a platoon in
laughed
Fallujah.
bitterly.
Lost
You
12
just took
Marines
down
in
3
3 days.
Spetsnaz-trained
Want to
operators
compare
in
guilt?
complete darkness.
Want to measure
I
whose
got lucky.
failure weighs more?
Lucky?
Hayes
Mills had
stands.
entered the mess hall now.
The only difference
His eyes
between us
wide with
is
recognition
I'm still
and
wearing the
respect.
uniform.
Ma'am,
Still
what you did
honoring the
tonight,
fallen
that
by
wasn't
training
luck.
the living.
That was
What
ghost
are you
team
doing?
training.
The
He
acoustic
leaves
targeting,
before she can
the pressure
answer.
point
The
strikes,
medical tent
the predictive
feels smaller
movement
suddenly.
patterns.
I
The
studied
coin
your
sits on the
tactics
table,
and intelligence
catching
school.
morning light through the
More
canvas.
Marines were flooding in now.
4 words warned
Word
by
had spread
decades of
across the
handling.
base faster
Bridges
than
appear
wildfire.
when needed. Phantom
Her
6
phone
was
buzzes
alive.
again.
The
Same
legend
encrypted
was real.
number.
And she'd been cleaning their
Authentication
mess
still
hall for
required.
15
Package
years.
incoming.
Helen
Grid
looked uncomfortable with the
7-7.
attention.
Grid
She
7-7.
moved toward the door,
The
but
exact
stopped
spot where the
when she heard
Marines
the
were
distinctive
trapped
sound of
yesterday.
helicopters
Someone
approaching.
wants to meet,
Not just
using
any
channels that
helicopters.
supposedly
The twin
died in
rotor beam of
Afghanistan.
CH-47
She should ignore it.
Chinooks.
She's built
military
a new life,
transport,
quiet,
flying in formation.
invisible, safe
Torres's
from the weight
radio
of
crackled
command
to life.
decisions.
Captain,
Safe from
this is
making the
Tower.
wrong call
We have
again.
4
But
inbound
curiosity
helicopters
wins.
requesting
Always
immediate
does.
landing.
She arrives at
Authorization
grade
code
7-7
is
at noon.
The
flood
controller
damage
paused,
is severe.
his voice
Trees
shaking.
down.
Sir,
Debris scattered.
it's a Joint
the
Chiefs
equipment platform
authorization.
collapsed into
4
twisted metal.
stars.
The kill
4
zone
of
is
them.
fully exposed now.
Through the mess hall
Unexploded
windows,
ordnance
everyone
visible
watched
in
as the
harsh
helicopters
sunlight.
descended
EOD
onto the parade
teams are
ground.
marking positions
Even
for
at a
disposal.
distance, the
A
stars
figure
on the
stands at the
aircraft were
ravine's
visible.
edge. Male,
These weren't just
civilian
any generals,
clothes,
but
these
the
were the
posture
highest
screams
ranking
military.
officers in their
He
respective
turns as she
branches.
approaches.
Helen
Her breath
closed her
catches.
eyes.
Rodriguez,
They said if Ghost Protocol
Technical
was
Sergeant
ever
Michael
activated,
Rodriguez,
they'd come.
pararescue.
I didn't think they'd
He was
remember
supposed to
after
be
all
on the
these
Ghazni
years.
mission.
but got
General
held
Robert
back
Anderson,
from medical,
Army Chief of
torn
Staff.
ACL during
General
training.
Patricia
If he'd been
Thompson,
there,
Marine
he'd be
Corps
dead too.
Commandant. Hello, Elise.
Admiral James
His
Hayes,
voice carries
Chief of
9
Naval
years of
Operations.
General
Or should I
Michael
say
Mitchell,
White Bridge,
Air Force Chief
that
of
person's
Staff.
gone.
Really?
They walked
because
in
I saw drone
formation
footage
across
that
the parade
suggests
ground.
otherwise.
Their aides
He
struggling
pulls out
to
a
keep
tablet,
pace.
shows her video
Every
from
Marine on the
yesterday.
base had stopped
Her movement
what they
through
were
the kill
doing to
zone,
watch.
frame by frame.
Jake looked
This
at
is
Helen
being
in
analyzed
amazement.
at the
4
pararescue
service
school.
chiefs.
They're
for
calling
one
it the most
most perfect example of tactical movement
Ghost
under
Team 6
pressure
didn't
ever
officially
recorded.
exist.
But
It
we
was
ran
just
operations for all
instinct,
branches.
training,
We were the solution
muscle
when
memory that
conventional
survived
forces
everything
couldn't
else.
operate.
Rodriguez
when the
steps
mission was
closer.
too dark,
Elise,
too
we need
dangerous,
you.
or too
The
politically
Air Force
sensitive
already
for
made their
acknowledged
offer.
units. Not the Air Force.
The generals entered the
us.
mess hall.
The PJ
room fell
community.
silent.
Every
Gestures
Marine
at the
snapped to
destroyed
attention.
training area.
The generals
What
moved
happened
past them
yesterday
all,
is happening
heading straight
everywhere.
for Helen.
Natural
She stood
disasters
still,
increasing.
not at attention.
Urban
She
warfare
wasn't
getting
military
more
anymore.
complex, but with
We're
a
losing
bearing that
people
commanded
because they
respect
don't know
nonetheless.
techniques that were
General
never
Anderson
officially
spoke
documented.
first. Hello,
Techniques
Six.
you developed.
General,
Techniques that died with
we
Jackson,
thought you were dead.
Martinez, and Thompson.
That was the idea, sir.
Hearing their names spoken
Why
aloud
activate
makes
the
her
protocol
flinch.
now, after
They wouldn't want
15
their knowledge
years?
to die with them.
Helen gestured to
Rodriguez
Kozlov.
continues.
He found
You know
me,
that,
which means others
I can't teach
too.
what got them
And he
killed.
mentioned Hydra.
You can teach
if that
what saved
network is
67
real.
others.
If there are
What
truly
saved
47
280
embedded
Marines
assets, then the
yesterday.
country needs to
He
know.
shows her another video.
General Thompson stepped
Young
forward.
pararescue
She was the first
trainees
female
attempting to
Marine Corps
navigate a
commandant,
flood simulation.
and her eyes held a
They're
mixture
good,
of respect,
but their
and
movement
something
lacks
deeper.
something.
The
You could have
intuitive
stayed
understanding
hidden.
that comes
Could have
from
let him complete
experience.
his mission.
They
He
need
would have
more
killed
than
7
manual
Marines
knowledge.
and stolen
They need
classified
wisdom,
defense
the kind that only
specifications,
comes from
ma'am.
someone who's
Hiding
been there.
stopped being an
There
option
are
the
other
moment he
instructors.
entered this base.
None who survived
Admiral
what
Hayes
you
cleared his
survived.
throat.
None
The president
who
has
carry
been
what you
briefed.
carry. He's authorized
He pauses.
full reinstatement
The
if you
guilt
want
makes
it.
you better,
Your
Elise.
previous rank
It makes you
back pay
careful,
for 15
thorough.
years. It makes
Full
you think
honors.
about every possible
Helen shook her
failure
head.
before
I'm
it
done with
happens.
killing, Admiral.
That's
I've
what
been
they
done
need
since
to learn.
Bosnia.
The
Then what do you
helicopter
want?
passes overhead.
General Mitchell asked.
Medical evacuation.
Helen looked at
heading
Jake
for the
at
base
Maria,
hospital.
at
The
Derek.
sound triggers
At all
something.
the young
a flash
Marines
of
who had
memory.
witnessed something
Different
extraordinary
helicopter
tonight.
Different
These
desert.
kids need
carrying
training,
bodies
real
instead
training,
of survivors.
not just how
I
to
need
fight
time,
in daylight with
she
million-dollar
says.
equipment.
Take all you need,
but how to operate
but know
when
this.
everything goes dark.
Every day you wait.
When technology
someone else
fails,
is learning the hard
when they're
way.
outnumbered and outgunned.
Someone else is losing
You wanna
teammates because
teach?
they don't know what
I want to
you
make
know.
sure that the next
He
time
hands her a
someone
card.
like Kozlov
Simple.
comes calling,
Just a phone
there's
number
more than
and
one
4
old
words
janitor who can stop
that
them.
others may live.
The generals exchanged
the PJ
glances.
motto.
Anderson
the
nodded
words that
slowly.
defined her life for
The
20
Ghost
years.
Protocol Academy.
Words that still
We've had the
define
plans
it,
drawn
even
up
in
for
hiding.
20 years.
Rodriguez
for the
walks
right
away,
person to run
leaving
it.
her standing
I
at
have
the edge of
conditions,
destruction
Helen
that
said.
mirrors her
Name
own
them.
internal landscape.
First, it's
broken
open to
ground,
all branches.
dangerous
Second,
remnants,
women
paths
get
that
equal
need clearing
consideration
before
for
anyone else
selection.
can cross safely.
Third,
she
we focus
returns
on
to the medical
protective
tent to find it
operations,
occupied,
saving lives,
not by medical
not taking
staff,
them.
by
Fourth,
Marines.
she looked at
dozens
Jake.
of them
I get
sitting
to
on the
choose
floor,
my first
standing
candidates.
against walls.
Jake's
filling
eyes
every
widened.
available space.
After everything he'd done,
Staff
after the
Sergeant
way he
Morrison is
treated
at
her,
the front.
she was
looking
choosing
uncomfortable
him.
but
Helen
determined.
saw his confusion.
Can I help
Your
you?
grandfather
Elise
would never
asks.
forgive me if I
We're
didn't
here
give
to
you
learn,
the chance
Morrison
to be better
says.
than you were tonight.
About the route.
Besides,
how you saw it when
she
we
smiled
couldn't.
slightly.
I'm not an instructor.
You have his eyes.
Maybe not officially.
He could see
but
in
you know
complete
something we
darkness,
don't.
too.
He
Once
pulls
I
out a
taught him
map.
how.
Show us.
General
please.
Anderson extended his
She
hand.
could refuse.
Welcome
Should
back, Colonel
refuse.
Morrison.
She's just a
Helen
contractor.
looked at his hand
but
for a long
she looks
moment,
at their faces.
then shook it.
Young, eager,
It's still
afraid
Carter.
of making the
Helen
wrong call.
Carter.
The same
Colonel
faces
died
she
in
saw
Bosnia
in
with her
pararescue
team.
training.
The janitor
the same
survived
faces
to
that
teach
haunt
their
her
lessons.
dreams.
Then
Fine.
welcome back
She
to
takes
the
the
map.
map. First
Maria
lesson,
Santos
stop
stepped
looking
forward
at what's
tentatively.
there. Start
Ma'am,
looking at what's not.
Could I?
For the next
Would you
2
consider
hours,
me for
she
the
teaches.
academy?
Not formally,
Helen studied
not
her.
officially.
The young woman
just
who had
sharing
kicked
what
her
she knows
while she was down.
How water
Who called her
moves,
trash.
how pressure
Why?
builds.
Because
how to read
tonight I
terrain
learned
for
that
what it
real
was,
strength
what
isn't
it
about
is,
size
and
or
what it's
intimidation.
becoming.
How
It's
to
about
see the
protecting
invisible
others
paths
even
that
when they
exist
don't
in
deserve
every
it.
impossible
You
situation.
protected us after we.
They listen with
Her voice
intensity
broke.
that surprises
after
her.
we were
Take
horrible
notes.
to you.
Ask questions
Everyone
that show
deserves
their
a
thinking,
second chance,
not just
Santos.
memorizing.
Even bullies who
Why
kick
that
old
specific
women.
angle of approach?
Derek
one
Chen raised
asks.
his hand.
Because
I
water
want
follows
in too,
gravity,
but
I want to
debris
learn how you
follows
did what you
momentum.
did.
The angle
acoustic
puts you targeting
tuning,
intersection
the movement
points.
prediction. How did
It's
you
like
know
you
the
turned
ordinance was
darkness into
unstable?
an advantage.
3 years of exposure
Helen
to
nodded
moisture,
slowly.
metal fatigue
Darkness
patterns,
is only frightening
the way
if
they
you
sat
don't
in the
understand
mud,
it.
too high.
Once you
meaning
learn
the
its
casings
language,
had degraded
it
and
becomes your
trapped air.
greatest ally.
She's deep in explanation
Kozlov
when she
suddenly
realizes
spoke up.
she's not
His
just
voice
reciting
bitter.
facts.
You're making
She's
a
teaching.
mistake.
Really
Hydra
teaching.
won't stop.
Passing on
They
knowledge
know
that
you're
exists
alive
nowhere
now.
in manuals.
They'll
because
come
it was
for
learned
you.
in places
For all
manuals
of you.
don't cover.
Helen
Helen
walked
Morrison
over to
arrives
him,
as she's
knelt
finishing.
down so
He
they were
doesn't
eye
interrupt,
level.
just watches
Let
from the
them come.
doorway.
When
I've
the
been
Marines
hiding
file
for
out,
15
each
years,
one
Victor.
thanking her,
I'm
some
tired of
saluting
hiding.
despite her
She
civilian
leans
status.
closer,
He
speaking
approaches.
in Russian.
That was
Tell your
impressive,
handlers
he
that
says.
Phantom 6
That
is
was a
dead,
one-time
but
thing.
Helen Carter
Was
is
it?
very much
He
alive.
sits on a supply crate,
and she's going
making
to train
himself
an
less
entire
imposing.
generation
Grant,
of ghosts.
can I be direct?
Kozlov's
She
face
nods.
paled. You're
The
going
military
to
is
create
changing.
an army of
We're
operators
facing
like
threats that don't
yourself?
fit traditional
No,
training.
I'm
Urban
going to create
warfare,
something better.
climate disasters,
Protectors who
hybrid
operate in
conflicts.
darkness but serve the
We
light.
need people who think
She stood,
differently,
switching
who
back to
see
English.
differently.
Your war
He
is over,
pauses.
Victor.
We need
You
bridges.
lost the moment you walked into
There are
my
plenty
mess
of
hall.
not like you.
The generals
You're
were
not just a
already
bridge
making
between
plans,
danger and
speaking
safety.
rapidly into secure
You're a bridge
phones.
between old
The academy
knowledge
would
and
be
new
fast-tracked.
needs.
Resources
Between
would
what
be
we were
allocated.
and what we need
But
to
Helen wasn't
become.
listening. She
I'm
was
a
looking
civilian
around the mess
contractor,
hall, her mess
by
hall,
choice,
where she'd spent
a
15
choice you can
years in
change.
humble service.
He stands,
maintaining her
The
cover,
offer isn't just
keeping
about
her
rank or
skills
back
sharp
pay.
by observing
It's
everyone
about
who came
purpose.
through, about using
Jake
your
approached
guilt
hesitantly.
constructively
Ms.
instead
Carter,
of letting it bury
Helen,
you.
I need to tell you
Sir,
something.
with
Speak
respect,
freely, Morrison.
you don't know what you're
My
asking.
grandfather,
I'm asking you to
before he
stop
died,
punishing
he
yourself
used to
for
tell
being
me
human,
stories
to stop
about a
hiding
warrior
from the
who
very
moved like
skills that make you
smoke,
extraordinary,
who could fight in complete
his
darkness,
voice softens.
who saved
Your
his life
teammates
in
in
Bosnia.
Bosnia. Would they
Jake's
want
voice
this?
trembled.
You
He said she
alone,
was the bravest
wasting what
person
you
he
know,
ever knew.
but he
The
also
question
said she
hangs
was
in
the
the air like
saddest,
smoke.
because she
That
carried the
night,
weight of
Elise
everyone
sits
she
in her
couldn't
contractor
save.
quarters.
Helen's
A
composure
small trailer
finally
that's
cracked
more
slightly.
functional than
A single
comfortable.
tear ran down
The
her
challenge
cheek.
coin from
Tim
Williams
always
sits on
saw
her
too
desk
much.
next to three
He
others.
left me something.
Coins she's
Told
carried
me
for
to give
9
it to her
years.
if I ever found her.
One from Jackson.
I thought he was talking
one
about
from
a myth,
Martinez.
a legend.
One from Thompson.
I never
Her
imagined
team.
her
Jake
dead.
pulled out a small
She picks
wooden
up
box from
Jackson's
his
coin.
pocket. He was
He
24
carried this for
from
20
Detroit.
years.
Joined the
Said
Air
it
Force to
belonged
pay
to
for
someone who
college.
sacrificed
Stayed because he
everything for
found
others.
purpose.
Helen
Could
opened the
calculate
box
drop
with
zones in
trembling
his head
fingers.
faster than
Inside
computers.
was a challenge
Martinez's
coin,
coin
worn
is
smooth by
heavier.
years of handling.
Custom made.
On one
with
side,
his daughter's
the
birthday
ghost team
engraved
6
on the
insignia.
edge.
On the other,
13
6
now.
names.
The
Never
5
knew
her
her
father
father
died saving
and
others.
others.
He had this
Thompson's
made after
is
the
the
memorial
simple,
service.
standard
Jake
PJ
explained.
coin.
Said
Nothing
the sixth
special
ghost
except
was still
for the
out there,
fingerprint smudge
still
that won't
watching over
polish
people,
off.
still
He was
protecting
always
those who
fidgeting
couldn't
with
protect
it.
themselves.
Nervous habit from a nervous
Helen held
kid
the
who
coin
became a
tightly,
fearless
her eyes
operator.
closing as
3
memories
coins,
flooded back.
3 lives.
Your grandfather
3
was
reasons
more
she
than my
stopped being
spotter,
white break.
Jake. He was
Her
my
phone
conscience.
buzzes.
When the
Different
darkness
number
got
this
too
time,
deep,
but
when
she
I couldn't see the
recognizes the
difference
area
between
code.
justice and vengeance
Para-rescue
anymore,
school,
he pulled me
Kirtland
back.
Air Force Base.
He said you saved
This is Major
300
Sarah
children in
Chen.
Bosnia.
Colonel Rodriguez said you might be
317,
expecting my call.
Helen corrected.
Chen.
But I couldn't save
Like the
my
Marine
team.
Raider from World War
They
II.
died because
Like
I
the
made
drone
a choice.
operator who filmed
Save
her
the
yesterday.
children or save my
The universe
people.
has a sense
I
of
chose
humor.
the children.
I'm
and I've
listening,
lived with that
Elise
choice
says.
for 28 years.
We're running a high-risk
General
exercise
Thompson stepped
next
forward.
week.
You made
Water
the right
rescue
choice,
in
Helen.
flash flood
Those children are
conditions.
adults now.
The instructors
Many of
are
them
good,
have families
but
of their
they're
own.
working from manuals
You gave them
written
lives
before
your team
climate
would have been
change
proud to
rewrote the
sacrifice
rules.
for.
Chen
I know.
pauses. Helen
We've
said
already
quietly,
lost 2 trainees
but
this
knowing
year.
and feeling
not killed,
are different
but
things.
washed out because
The
they
base
couldn't
was
adapt
fully
to
alert
conditions
now.
the manuals
Marines
don't
were gathering
cover.
outside the
What
mess
do you
hall,
want from
trying
me?
to catch a glimpse
One
of the
day,
living legend.
Come observe.
Someone
Don't
started a
teach,
slow clap,
don't interact.
then another.
Just watch
Soon,
and tell
the
us what
entire
we're missing.
base was
Chen's
applauding.
voice carries
Not the dramatic
carefully controlled
celebration of a
desperation.
sports victory,
We'll
but
fly
the
you
deep,
in,
respectful
fly you out.
acknowledgement of
No
service
commitment
beyond
beyond
measure.
that.
Helen
Elise
looked
looks
uncomfortable
uncomfortable
with
with
the
the
attention.
attention.
She
Three
turned to the
dead, you
generals.
can't teach
If
anymore.
we're doing this
280
academy, I have
living
one
who needed
more
what she
condition.
knew.
What
Name
day?
it.
Anderson said.
Thursday. No
0600 start time.
No media.
Thursday.
No
5
glory.
days away.
Ghosts
5
don't
days
seek
to decide
spotlights.
whether to remain a
Agreed.
ghost or become a
Helen
bridge
nodded,
again.
then looked
I'll
around
think
the mess
about
hall
it.
one more time.
That's all we ask.
I'll need to train
The
my
call
replacement.
ends.
This
Elise
place
sets
won't
down
clean
the phone,
itself.
picks up all
Ma'am,
4 coins.
Colonel Richards
the
spoke
3
up,
from her
still
dead,
holding his
the
head
1
from
from the
Williams.
earlier takedown.
They're perfectly
I
balanced
think we
in
can
her
manage
palm.
professional
Equal
cleaning
weight
staff.
despite different
Professional
metals.
cleaning staff
She thinks
don't
about
know
yesterday.
when someone's been
The
casing
moment
the
in the
base
kill
for 3
zone when
months.
she had to
Helen
choose between
pointed
the
out.
safe path
Sometimes
and
the
saving
best
those
security
Marines.
is the
There was
person
no
everyone
actual
ignores.
choice. Her
She
body
walked
moved
toward the
before
door,
her mind
then
could
paused.
object.
The
7
7
years of
Marines were
training
here tonight,
overriding 9
Morrison,
years of guilt.
Santos,
Maybe that's
Chen,
the answer.
and the others.
Maybe she doesn't
They're
need
my
to
first
choose
selection
between
for the
being a ghost
academy.
and being a
They've
bridge.
already had their
Maybe
first
she
lesson.
can be both.
Which was
a ghost who
General
appears when
Mitchell
needed.
asked.
Builds
Never
the
judge a
bridge,
book by
then
its
fades
cover.
away.
And always
Her
be
phone
kind
buzzes
to the
one more
cleaning
time.
staff.
Text message
She
from an
smiled
unknown
slightly.
number.
You
Saw
never
the
know
footage.
when your life
you
might
saved them
depend
like
on
you
it.
tried to save us.
As Helen walked out
Stop
into the
carrying
night,
our deaths.
the generals
Carry
following
our
at a
purpose
respectful
instead.
distance. Jake called out,
J-M-T.
"Ms. Carter!"
Impossible.
What happens
Dead
now?
men don't text.
She turned back,
but the message is
and
there.
for a moment,
using
Jake saw
abbreviations
not the
only
old
her
janitor
team would know,
not the
Someone's
legendary
playing
operator,
games,
or
but simply a
she
woman
dials
who had found
Rodriguez.
purpose again.
Did you?
After years
The
in
text?
the shadows?
No, but I
now,
know who
Mr.
did.
Morrison,
He
we get to
sighs.
work.
Your
Jackson's
grandfather
brother
used
is
to
a
say
Marine,
that the hardest
stationed at
battles
your
aren't
base.
fought with weapons.
He's been watching
but
you
with
for
wisdom.
weeks.
The
trying to
academy
work up
opens
courage
in
to
2
approach.
weeks.
Martinez's
Don't be
widow
late.
remarried.
Yes, ma'am.
An Army Ranger
Helen
who
walks
teaches at the
across the
combat
parade
medic
ground.
course.
Her stride different
Thompson's
now.
sister works
Not
in
the
base
shuffle of an old
communications.
janitor.
They've
but
all been
not
waiting
quite
for
the
you to
predatory
surface.
grace of an elite
They blame
operator
me
either.
They
was
thank
something
you
in between
for staying with the
walk
body,
of someone who
for
had
fighting
found
off
balance
insurgents
between
alone
who they
for
were
6 hours
and who they had
for
to
carrying
be.
their memory
Behind her,
even when
Kozlov
it
was
was
being
being
loaded into a
Rodriguez's
secure
voice is
transport.
gentle now.
He would be interrogated.
Elise, his
You're
hydrant
the only
network
one who
exposed and
blames you.
dismantled.
The
She ends
47
call.
embedded assets
Sits
he
in
had mentioned
silence.
would be
The coins
identified
grow
and
warm in her
neutralized.
hand.
But that was work
Outside,
for others
she can
now.
hear the bass
Helen
settling
had a
into
different
night
mission.
routine.
General
Taps will
Anderson
play
walks
soon.
beside her.
The
You know
lonely
this
bugle
changes
call that
everything.
ends the duty day.
Ghost Protocol
She's
Academy
heard it
will
thousands of
revolutionize
times,
how we
but
train
tonight it will
special
sound
operators.
different.
Tonight it will sound
It's not
like a
about
question.
creating super soldiers,
What bridge
General.
will you build
It's about
tomorrow?
teaching them that
Thursday
the most
arrives with
powerful
another
weapon
storm
isn't
threatening.
technology
Elise
or
stands
strength.
outside the
It's
pararescue
understanding
school at Kirtland,
understanding
watching
terrain,
trainees prepare for the
understanding
water
enemies,
rescue
but most
exercise.
importantly,
They're young,
understanding
so impossibly
themselves.
young.
The
And
same
you think
age as
these 7
Jackson,
Marines have what it
Martinez,
takes?
and Thompson.
Helen
when they
glanced
died.
back at the
Major
mess hall
Chen
where
meets her
Jake
at
and
the
others stood
observation
watching.
post.
Thank
They
you for
faced
coming.
their fear tonight.
I'm just
They saw
observing.
their assumption shattered.
Of course.
They learned
Chen
humility.
hands her binoculars.
That's more than most
The scenario
operators learn in
simulates
years
the
of
Houston
training.
floods from
Even
last
the
year.
ones who bullied you,
Multiple casualties,
especially them,
contaminated
they've
water,
learned the hardest lesson
structural
of all,
collapse
that
hazards.
strength without honor
Elise
is just
watches the
violence,
trainees enter
and
the training
violence
pool.
without purpose
Olympic-sized
is just
but
cruelty.
modified with obstacles,
A secure
current
phone rang.
generators,
Anderson
and
answered,
debris.
listened,
They're good.
then handed it to
Textbook
Helen.
perfect, actually.
It's for you,
which is the problem.
Helen took the
They're
phone
thinking too
reluctantly.
much. she says after
Yes?
10 minutes. Chen
Ms.
leans
Carter?
forward. Explain.
The voice was familiar,
Third trainee
but
from the
older,
left,
more
He's
mature.
calculating current speed instead
This is
of
Anna
feeling
Volkov.
it. Lost 2
You might
seconds
not
on
remember
entry
me, but
because he was thinking about water pressure.
Little Anna?
Instead of trusting his
Helen's
body,
voice
she
softened.
points to another. That one's fighting
From
the
Sarajevo?
water instead of using it, wasting energy
Not
that
so
he'll
little
need later.
anymore.
The manuals
I'm
say
37 now.
The manuals were written
Married
for
with 3
predictable
children
water,
of my own.
pools, lakes.
The woman's
Even
voice
ocean
broke
rescue
slightly.
has patterns. Elise lowers
I
the
saw the
binoculars.
news bulletin.
Flood water is
They
chaos.
said Phantom
it has
6
no
was
pattern.
alive.
You can't think your way through
I had
chaos.
to call.
So
Had
what
to
do you
thank
do?
you.
You saved
For
my
the
life
first
when I
time
was
in
9 years old. Elise feels
You
the
carried me
instructor
out
in
of
her
that
trafficking
wake-up.
center yourself.
Not the guilt-ridden survivor,
Helen's eyes
but the
closed.
teacher who
Memories
produced some
flooding
of the
back.
best PJs
Anna
in
with
Air
the
Force
red ribbons
history.
in her hair.
You become
remember
the chaos.
I
she
remember
says.
all
Move with it
317
instead of through it.
There was
Stop
silence on
trying
the
to
line.
impose
Then
order
Anna
on
spoke
disorder.
again. My
She
daughter
watches
is
another
17
trainee
now.
struggle
She wants
with a
to be a
simulated
Marine.
casualty.
I've been terrified.
A weighted
thinking about
dummy
her
that
and
moves
moves
her.
like a panicked swimmer.
But knowing
He's
you're
gonna
training the
lose it in
next
3
generation,
seconds, she
I'm not
predicts.
afraid anymore.
3 seconds later,
What's her
the dummy
name?
slips from the trainee's
Helena.
grip.
I
How did
named
you
her
know?
after you.
His shoulder angle.
Helen had to take
He's
a moment
lifting
to
instead of
compose
guiding.
herself.
Water weight
Send me her
multiplies
information.
by.
If she's
She
anything
stops.
like her mother,
I need to
she'll
show
make
them.
an excellent
You
ghost.
said just observing.
After ending the
But
call,
Elise is
Helen
already
handed the
moving.
phone back to Anderson.
She strips off her
They
jacket,
had reached a
revealing the
nondescript
athletic
building
build
at the edge
that
of the
surprised
base.
everyone
She looked
yesterday.
at it with surprise.
She doesn't ask permission.
This
just
is
drops into the
your
pool.
quarters for tonight.
The
Anderson
water is
said.
cold.
Tomorrow we'll
Artificially
discuss the
turbulent.
academy details.
The trainees
but
stop.
tonight,
Watching
you
this
should
middle-aged
rest.
woman
You've
navigate
carried this
their course
burden
like
alone
it's a
for
calm
too
lake.
long.
She reaches
Helen
the
looked at the
struggling
building,
trainee,
then back
takes
at the
the
mess
dummy.
hall in the distance.
Don't lift, she
I should
says.
clean up.
Redirect.
The morning shift will
Water
need-
wants to go
Helen,
somewhere.
Thompson
Let it take the
interrupted
weight
gently.
where you want
You're
it
not
to
the
go.
janitor anymore.
She demonstrates.
No,
using the current
Helen
to
agreed.
spin the dummy
But
into recovery
I'm not Phantom
position.
6 either.
What took
that
him
person
40
died
seconds
in
of
Bosnia
struggle
with her
takes her
team.
5 seconds of
She looked at
guided
each
motion.
general in turn.
Who are you?
I'm something
the
new
trainee
now.
asks.
Someone who
Chen
teaches
calls
others
from
to walk in
poolside.
darkness.
Someone
without
who's done
losing
this
their
when it
light.
wasn't training.
General Hayes nodded slowly.
Elise spends the next
What should
3
we call
hours
you
in the
then?
pool.
Helen
Not
thought
officially
for a moment.
teaching.
Instructor
She has
Carter
no
will
authority
do
for that.
Just another teacher
Just showing.
at just another
Demonstrating.
training facility.
Letting muscle
There's
memory
nothing
develop
just
over
another
20
about what
years
you're
flow
building,
into movements
Mitchell said.
these trainees have
That's
never
the point,
seen.
General.
The
By
most
the
dangerous
end, they're
person in
moving
any
differently.
room
Not
is the one
perfectly,
nobody
but
notices.
better. More
I'm going to
fluid,
teach them
more
to be
adaptive,
invisible in
She's
plain
toweling
sight.
off when Rodriguez
to be
appears.
protectors who
So much
never
for
need
just
recognition.
observing.
To
They
be
needed-
ghosts
they
who guard
needed
the
you,
living.
and you couldn't
As the
help
generals
yourself.
departed,
He
leaving
smiles.
Helen alone
The
outside
teacher
her
in you
temporary
isn't dead,
quarters.
Elise.
She looked up
Just
at the
buried
stars.
under guilt.
The
that's
same
finally
stars she'd
starting to
navigated
crack.
by in Bosnia.
That
when
evening,
her
she's on a
GPS
flight
failed.
back to Texas.
The same stars
The training
her team
report
had
is already
seen on their last
circulating
night
through
through Para-Rescue Command
I
channels.
kept my promise.
3 hours
She
of
whispered to the
unofficial
night.
instruction that
I lived.
revolutionized
And
their
now
water
I'll make
rescue
sure others
protocols.
learn what we knew.
She lands to
That
find her
sometimes the
contract
greatest
position
heroes are the
terminated,
ones whose
not
names are
fired,
never known.
released with full
Inside
pay
the
and
quarters, she
commendation.
found a package
General
waiting on the
Morrison's
table.
doing.
No return address.
Your
but
services
she
are no
recognized
longer
the
required
handwriting.
as a
She opened
contractor,
it carefully,
he says when
revealing
she
a set of
confronts him,
dog tags.
because
not
we need
hers.
you as
She'd
something
thrown those
more.
away years
You
ago.
can't force
These were
me.
new, freshly
No,
minted.
but I can make
Instructor
staying
Helen
invisible
Carter.
possible.
They read.
He hands her
Ghost
a tablet
Protocol
showing
Academy
news footage.
And on the
Channel
back,
7
a
got the
simple
drone video
inscription.
from the rescue.
The shadow
You're
that
about to
guards
be
the
famous.
light.
The
There was a
invisible
note.
hero who
Welcome
saved
back to the
280
fight.
Marines.
But this time,
every
you're
news
not
outlet
alone.
in the country
A friend
will want
who
your
remembers
story.
Bosnia.
You leaked it.
Helen held the
I
tags for a
protected
long
it as long as I
moment,
could,
then put them on.
But stories this big
For
don't
15
stay
years,
quiet.
she'd hidden
He
from
leans
her
back.
past.
So
Now
you have a
she would
choice.
use it to forge
Face
a
the
better
cameras
future.
as a civilian
Her
contractor.
phone, the
who got
civilian
lucky,
one she'd
or
carried as a
face them
janitor,
as Senior Master
buzzed with a
Sergeant
text.
Grant,
It was from Jake
para-rescue
Morrison.
instructor.
Ms.
Teaching
Carter,
the next generation
I'm reading my
how to be
grandfather's
bridges.
journal.
He wrote
It's
about you
manipulation,
every day,
and they both
He
know
said
it.
you taught him
But
that
it's also
courage isn't
truth.
the absence
The story
of
is
fear,
out,
but action
the ghost
in
has
spite
been
of it.
seen.
I want to
The
learn
only
that
question
too.
is what form
She
she
texted
takes
back.
now.
Lesson
That
1
night,
starts
she
tomorrow.
stands in the empty
0500.
medical tent.
Bring
All
the
her
others.
carefully organized
What should we
supplies have been
prepare?
packed by others.
Nothing.
Ready for the
Darkness
next
will teach you
contractor.
everything you
The
need
space
to know.
that was her refuge for 6
Outside
weeks
is just
Camp
canvas and skeleton was settling into its nighttime
Williams
routine.
appears in the doorway.
Guards walk their
Ma'am,
posts.
the Marines from yesterday
slept
want to
in
say
their
something.
barracks. Before
And
she can
somewhere
object,
in a secure
the tent
detention
filled.
facility,
Not just the
Victor
280
Kozlov
she
was
saved,
beginning to
but others.
understand that he'd
Hundreds
made
of
a
Marines
catastrophic
cramming in
error.
until the tent
For
walls
those interested
bulged.
in learning real
Morrison,
protective tactics
Staff
from
Sergeant
former
Morrison,
special
who dismissed
operations
her,
instructors,
who laughed at her,
check out
who
the
later
online
saved her from the
defensive
flood,
strategies course.
steps forward.
This week
We took a
only,
vote.
It's
He
50%
says,
off for
unanimous.
those ready to step out
Every
of their
Marine
comfort
on this
zone
base
and into confidence.
He pulls out a document.
He'd thought
It's
he
a
was
petition
hunting an old
to
woman.
the Air Force.
Instead,
requesting
he'd
that
awakened
Senior
something
Master
far
Sergeant
more
Elise
dangerous,
Grant be
a
recalled to
teacher.
active duty.
And teachers,
and
unlike
assigned
soldiers,
soldiers,
don't just win
battles.
They
He
create
sets it on the
generations
table.
of winners.
718
Helen
signatures.
stood by the window,
The tent
watching
is
the
silent.
base she'd called
I'm
home
not
for 15
you
years.
are. Morrison
Tomorrow,
interrupts.
everything
You're
would
exactly
change.
who we need.
The Ghost Protocol
Someone
Academy
who's failed
would begin
and
its
survived
work.
it. Someone who knows
Marines
the
who had
cost
started
but
the
does the
night as
job
bullies
anyway
would begin
someone
their
who builds
transformation
bridges in
into
the dark
protectors,
so others
but
can
tonight,
cross in the light.
she had one more task.
Elise looks at the petition.
She picked up the
hundreds
secure
of
phone
names.
Anderson had left
Some she
and dialed a
recognizes
number
from
yesterday's
memory.
rescue.
It rang
Others
3
she's never
times
met,
before a voice
all
answered
asking
in
for the
Russian.
same thing.
This is control.
For her to stop hiding.
This is Phantom
and start
6,
teaching.
Helen said in perfect
Hayes
Russian.
steps forward.
The families of
Authentication,
Jackson,
Amber
Martinez,
Starr,
and Thompson
priority
have
message
also
from
signed.
Moscow.
They've been waiting 9 years for
There
you
was
to forgive
stunned
yourself.
silence.
Then
They're tired of
Phantom
waiting.
6 is dead.
The words break something inside
Phantom
her.
6 is dead.
The wall
Helen
she built
agreed.
after Ghazni.
But Helen
brick by
Carter
brick,
is very much
guilt by
alive,
guilt.
and she
It
has
doesn't
a message
crumble.
for your
walls that
Hydra
strong
network.
don't fall all at
What
once.
message?
But
Schools
cracks
in
appear.
session,
Light
class
gets
size,
through.
unlimited.
I don't know if I
graduation
can,
rate,
she admits.
100%.
You can't.
Course
Rodriguez
title
says,
How
appearing
to Hunt
beside
Hydra
Hayes.
Operatives
Not the
in
way you
Total
were
Darkness.
before. That
She
person
paused.
died in Ghazni with
and
your
Victor
team.
Kozlov,
But
he
this
failed.
person
Spectacularly.
gestures at her.
She
This
hung up
person
before they
saved
could respond.
280
Let them worry.
Marines.
Let them
This
wonder.
person taught
Let them
trainees in
fear
3
what was
hours
coming.
what manuals
The mess hall
couldn't
lights
teach
were
in
off
3
now.
months.
The space that
This
had been her
person is who
battlefield
we
just
need.
hours ago returning
Elise
to
picks up the
mundane
petition,
normality.
reads name
But
after
Helen
name.
knew better.
Each one
Every
a life that
mundane
contains
space
because
could become
she
a
acted.
battlefield.
Each one
Every
a vote for
ordinary
her to
person
stop
could be
running from her
extraordinary.
purpose.
Every shadow
At the
could
bottom,
hide a
in shaky
protector.
handwriting,
Jake
is another
Morrison
name.
stood outside her
Samuel
quarters,
Bridge,
having run
age
all the way
98.
from his barracks.
Her grandfather's younger
Miss
brother,
Carter,
still alive
I
in a
couldn't
veterans
sleep.
home in
I
Arizona.
keep thinking about what
Below
you
his
said
name,
about
he's written,
darkness being
the
an
family
ally.
tradition continues.
Helen opened the door.
She didn't
The
know
young
he was
Marine
still
who had
alive.
shoved her,
didn't know
mocked
he
her,
was watching,
humiliated
didn't
her,
know anyone
now
was
stood
watching.
with tears
But
streaming down his
they
face.
were. They all
I'm
were.
so sorry,
Waiting for the ghost
he
to
said.
become a bridge again.
Not just for tonight.
I need conditions.
For every veteran
she
I've
says
dismissed.
quietly.
Every person
Everyone
I've
leans
judged
in.
by appearance.
I won't take
Every
back
time I
pay.
chose cruelty over
That money
kindness.
goes to scholarships for Jackson.
Apologies
Martinez,
are words, Morrison.
and Thompson's
Tomorrow,
families.
you'll begin making
Deep breath.
amends through actions.
I won't work
What
at
if
a
I'm not
desk.
good enough?
If I
teach,
can't learn
I
what
teach
you're
in the
teaching?
field. Helen
In
studied
the
him.
water.
So young.
In the situation
so much
where
like his
manuals
grandfather
fail.
before Bosnia.
Your
Done.
grandfather asked me the
Rodriguez says
same question
immediately.
once.
Want to
I
know
want
what I told
authority
him?
to rewrite
Jake
the rescue
nodded eagerly.
protocols.
I told
All
him
of
that
them.
good enough
based
is the
on what
enemy of
actually
great,
works.
that fear
not
of
what
failure
looks good
is
on
just
paper.
another darkness
Approved.
to navigate. General
And
Morrison
that the only
says
way
from
to
the
honor
doorway.
the fallen is
When
to
did
be
he
better
arrive?
than we were yesterday.
And I want to start with
Did he
water
become
rescue.
great?
The climate's
He became
changing.
something
Floods
better.
are increasing.
He became reliable.
People are dying
In
because
pitch
they're using
darkness,
20th
under
century
fire,
tactics for
outnumbered and
21st century
outgunned.
disasters.
Tim Morrison never failed
Whatever
to
you
watch
need.
my 6.
Elise
That's
sets down
worth
the
more than
petition.
greatness.
Looks at the
That's
faces
worth
filling
trust.
the tent.
Young
Jake
Marines
straightened.
who will face
I wanna
dangers
earn
she
that.
can't imagine.
That trust.
Who will need skills
Then
that
be
don't
here at
exist in
0500
manuals yet.
and Morrison
Who will build bridges
yes,
she'll
ma'am.
never see.
Bring
I'll
coffee.
need time to
black,
process the
real
paperwork,
stuff,
not that
already
mess hall
done.
swamp water.
Rodriguez says.
If I'm going to
pulling
turn
out a
you into
folder.
ghosts, I need
Reinstatement
proper fuel.
papers signed
Jake
by the
actually
Secretary of the
smiled.
Air Force.
Yes, ma'am.
Assignment
Zero
orders to the
500
pararescue
real
school.
coffee
With additional
As he ran
duty
back
as
to the
inter-service
barracks,
instructor.
Helen allowed herself
Your
a
security
small
clearance
smile,
was
too.
never actually
The
revoked.
boy had
just
potential.
suspended.
They all
Your
did.
medical is
Even the
current
ones
thanks
who'd
to your
been
contractor
cruel.
requirements.
Maybe especially them.
You were that
They'd
sure
learned
I'd say
humility
yes.
tonight, and
We
that
were
was
sure
the
you'd
first
say what
requirement
needed to
for
be
wisdom.
said.
Her
Yes
phone
just
rang
happens
again.
to be
The
what's
civilian
needed.
one.
The
She
caller
signs
ID
the
showed
papers.
unknown.
The pen weighs
but she
nothing.
recognized
But the
the breathing
signature
pattern
carries
before
9
the caller
years of
even
guilt,
spoke.
transformed
28
into purpose.
years,
And she
Senior
still
Master
recognized
Sergeant
it.
Elise Grant.
Hello,
United
Dimitri,
States Air
she
Force.
said calmly.
Pararescue.
They say you
Active
captured
duty.
Victor. They
The
say
tent
you're starting a
erupts.
school.
Not in
Both
cheers,
true.
Marines
You
and
know
PJs
I have to come
don't
for you
cheer.
now. It's
But
nothing
in
personal.
something better.
I know.
Nods.
Handshakes.
Helen's voice held
the
no
quiet
fear,
respect of
only
warriors,
resignation.
acknowledging another
But
warrior's
not tonight.
choice to continue
Tonight I'm
serving
just a
despite
tired
the
old woman
cost.
who needs sleep.
As the crowd disperses,
You were never
Thompson,
just anything,
the Marine
Phantom,
Thompson, the one she
Dimitri
saved
paused.
yesterday, approaches.
How long do I
Ma'am,
have before your
my
academy
kid
is
brother wants to be a
operational?
PJ.
2
Starts
weeks.
training next month.
Then I'll see
Would
you in
you-
13 days.
He stops.
Starts over.
Looking forward to it.
He'd be
She hung
honored
up
to
and
learn
set
from
the phone
you.
aside.
Another
Dmitry
Thompson.
Volkov,
Another
Anna's
young
uncle,
man who wants
and
to
the
be a
best
bridge
tracker
for
the
others.
Soviet Union ever
The universe
produced.
really does
He'd
have
been
a sense
hunting
of
her
humor.
for 3 decades.
Cruel and beautiful
Now,
in
he
equal
finally
measure.
knew where she was.
This Thompson,
But Helen
alive
wasn't
and
worried
eager,
about Dmitri.
wanting to follow
She
was
the
thinking
path
about
that led the
tomorrow,
first
about
Thompson
7
to his
Marines
death
who would
in
begin their
Ghazni.
transformation.
Yet Elise sees
about
it
the Ghost
differently now.
Academy
Not
that
a
would
curse
rise from the
repeating,
ashes
but
of
a
her
legacy
past.
continuing.
She looked at the challenge
Send him
coin
to
Jake
me,
had given
she
her,
says,
running
her
her
voice
thumb
carrying
over the
the
worn
weight of
surface.
9 years of
6
silence
names,
finally broken.
5 dead. I'll make
1
sure he's
presumed
ready.
dead.
Thompson
Tomorrow,
grins. She would
that
begin
bright,
creating a
innocent
new
smile of
generation
youth
of names
that hasn't yet learned
names
the
that would
true
never be
cost of
known,
service,
never be
and
celebrated.
leaves.
But
The
with
tent
stand
flaps
between the
swings closed
darkness
behind
and
him,
those who couldn't
and
protect
Elise is
themselves.
alone with her ghosts.
The next morning arrived
But they
with
feel
typical
different now.
California Marine
For 9
fog.
years, they've
0
been
500
accusations,
hours exactly.
whispers in the dark.
Helen stood
asking
in the
why
empty
she
training
lived when
ground
they
behind
died.
the mess hall.
Tonight,
a place
their
she'd observed
ancestors,
for 15
guides,
years, but
teachers
never
whose lessons
officially
were
entered.
written in blood
She
and
wore simple
sacrifice.
black tactical pants
Jackson's
and a
precision,
gray t-shirt.
Martinez's
no
courage,
rank, Thompson's
insignia,
unwavering loyalty,
nothing to indicate
not
who
burdens
or
to
what
carry,
she was.
but wisdom to
Jake
share.
arrived first,
She
carrying a
pulls out
thermos
her
of
phone,
coffee,
texts
texts Rodriguez,
like heaven
compared to
Need
standard
one more
military
condition.
brew.
Behind
His
him
response
came
is
Maria
immediate,
Santos,
as if
Derek
he's been
Chen,
waiting. Name it.
and the four other
A
Marines who had
memorial
been
at
in
the
the mess
school.
hall.
They
They
all
all
looked
looked
nervous,
Jackson,
uncertain.
Martinez,
You came,
Thompson.
Helen said
Every
simply.
trainee needs to
We
know
couldn't
their
not
names.
come, Maria
their
replied.
stories,
The
not
price
after
of
last
bridging.
night.
The
Helen
pause before
poured
her
herself
next
coffee,
message is
took
longer,
a sip,
waited
and
with
nodded
something she
appreciatively.
can't define.
Then,
Colombian, already
single
built.
origin.
We've been waiting for
Your
you to come to
grandfather
see
had
it.
good taste too,
Of course
Morrison.
they have.
Because
Because
the
the military
military
remembers
remembers
it's
it's
dead,
dead,
even
his
when the
technical
living
mind
try to
already
trying to
forget.
categorize
Even
and
when the living
organize
spend
what was
9
about to
years
happen.
running from memories.
We start
The
with
institution
forgetting
holds them
everything they
sacred,
think you know about
preserves them in
combat,
stone
Helen
and metal,
said.
keeps vigil
Line
over
up,
names that might
arms
otherwise
length
fade
apart.
into statistics.
They complied
She
immediately.
walks out of the medical
casual
tent for the
arrogance
last
from last
time.
night
Her
had been
footsteps
replaced
on the
with eager
aluminum
attention.
ramp sound
Close
different.
your eyes,
Not
Helen
the hollow
instructed.
echo of escape.
Now,
but
tell me
the
what you
solid
hear.
rhythm of purpose.
The ocean, Jake
The
said.
Texas sun is
What
setting,
else?
painting the sky
Helicopters
in
from the
shades of amber
airfield
and gold
Maria
that
added.
remind her of
Maybe
Afghan
3 clicks
sunsets,
south,
but without the bitter
Good.
edge of loss.
What else?
Storm
Footsteps
clouds from yesterday's
Derek said
chaos
suddenly.
are breaking apart.
Someone's watching
letting
us.
light
Multiple
through in cathedral
someones.
rays that
Helen
touch the
smiled
flood-scarred
slightly.
earth with
Open your
something
eyes
almost
and turn
like
around.
benediction.
Behind
Taps
them
begins
stood
to
20
play across the
Marines,
base,
including
that
Colonel
mournful
Richards,
bugle
Captain
call to
Torres,
end every
and
military
Sergeant
day.
Mills.
24
They'd been
notes
approaching
that
for
marked
the last
the end
two
of duty
minutes
since the
trying
Civil
to
War.
observe without
She's
being
heard it
noticed.
thousands of times.
Lesson 1,
in dozens
Helen
of countries
said.
over
You're always
flag-draped
being
coffins
watched.
and empty
The question is whether
battlefields.
you know it or not.
But tonight,
these
it doesn't
Marines
sound
wanted
like
to
an
see the
ending.
legendary
It sounds
Phantom
like a
6
beginning.
in action.
A
But I'm
bridge
not here to
between
put
what
on
was
a show.
and what will be.
Morrison,
Between the
Santos,
guilt that paralyzed
Chen,
and the purpose
you're going
that
to demonstrate
propels.
what you learned last
Tomorrow
night.
she'll fly to
We didn't
Kirtland,
learn anything,
to the
Jake
pararescue
protested.
school, where
We
she
just
first learned to
survived.
be a bridge.
Survival is
Tomorrow
the first
she'll
lesson.
face the memorials
You
to
stayed
her
calm
dead
when the
teammates.
lights went out.
Their names
You
carved
followed
in granite.
instructions
Their
from someone
stories
you'd
preserved for
dismissed as
generations
worthless
of
hours
PJs
before.
who will never know
You
them,
navigated
but
and
will
carried their
complete
legacy.
darkness.
That's
Tomorrow
more than
she'll
most
begin
people
teaching
accomplish
others
in a
what
lifetime
Jackson,
of training.
Martinez, and Thompson
Mills stepped
taught her
forward
with their
Ma'am,
lives and their
with
deaths.
respect. The
That
base
bridges
commander
aren't
wants
built
to
from
know when the
perfection,
official
but from the
academy
willingness
starts.
to span impossible
It started
distances
the moment that
despite
these
the
7
risk of
decided to
falling.
show up,
But tonight,
despite their
she
shame
stands
and
in the
fear,
Texas
Helen
dust,
replied.
wearing civilian
Everything else is
clothes
just
for the last
paperwork.
time.
Over the
And
next
whispers
2
the
hours,
pararescue
Helen led them
motto
through
that
exercises
never really
that
left
seemed
her
simple,
lips,
but
that
were
others may
impossibly
live.
difficult.
The words
Standing
carry on the
perfectly still
wind
for 20
across
minutes,
the base,
walking
over the
heel to toe in a
flood-damaged
straight
training
line
area
with
where
eyes
280
closed,
Marines
identifying
lived,
objects
because
by
one
sound
ghost
alone,
remembered how to
counting
be a bridge.
heartbeats in a crowd.
In her pocket, 4
This is
challenge coins
ridiculous,
clicked together.
one of the watching
3 from the
Marines
dead,
muttered.
1
This
from
isn't
the living.
combat training.
Equal weight.
Helen
equal
heard him
honor,
from 30 feet
equal
away.
purpose.
You're right,
Senior
Corporal
Master
Hendricks.
Sergeant Elise
It's
Grant.
not combat
Call
training.
sign White
It's
Bridge
survival
is
training.
going home.
Combat
Not to a
lasts
place,
seconds
but
or
to a
minutes.
purpose.
Survival
Not to forget
lasts
the
a
past,
lifetime.
but to
Which
forge
would you
the
rather
future
master?
from its lessons.
Hendricks
the
flushed,
bridge is rebuilt.
not having realized
Others
she could
may
hear
now
him
cross
or know his name.
Some debts
He'd
are paid
never
in
introduced
silence,
himself,
but
Helen had
forgotten.
been watching everyone on base for 15 years.
The
She knew
stories
them all.
end here,
By
but
0700,
the journey
word had
continues.
spread across the
Many new
base. The
episodes
training
are
ground was
waiting for
surrounded by
you.
off-duty
And
Marines,
if you
all
enjoy,
wanting to witness
please
history.
take a moment
Helen
to
ignored them,
like,
focusing on her
subscribe
7
to
students.
our EV
Santos,
Story
she
channel,
called out,
and
you
turn
kicked
on
me
the
last
bell.
night when I was
See
down.
you in the
Why?
next story.
Maria's